Good afternoon to you and welcome to this live broadcast of the Senate. This being the very 5th day of October, the year being 2022, a broadcast made possible through the collaboration between the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation and the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit. The Senate is sitting today afternoon with a full entry on the order paper this afternoon. There is a couple of procedural motions that will be moved before the floor this afternoon, as well as papers that will be tabled before the floor. And to just take you through some of the highlights in the order of business this afternoon is that the Senate Majority Leader will be moving a procedural motion to limit the debate on motions that pursuant to standing orders number 101, subsection 1, the Senate does resolve that debate on a motion, and this is a motion not sponsored by the majority as well as minority party or a committee, shall be limited to a maximum of 3 hours and not more than 20 minutes for the mover and 20 minutes for the majority party official responder. Another procedural motion by the Senate Leader of Majority is the limitation debate on the adjournment motion that, notwithstanding the provisions of Standing Orders number 110 subsection 4, the debate on any motion on matters adjournment of the Senate to a day other than the next normal sitting and in accordance with the calendar of the Senate shall be limited to a maximum of 2 hours with not more than 15 minutes for each speaker speaking, after which the Senate shall adjourn without a question being put. The motion on the debate on the address by His Excellency President during the opening of the 13th Parliament is also another motion that has been given priority on the order paper this afternoon, that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Orders 27, subsection 6, the Senate will be recording for exposition of public policy contained in the address of the President during the opening of the 13th Parliament that was delivered on Thursday, 29th September 2022. A couple of papers will be tabled before this House this afternoon, and the Senate calendar for regular sessions for the first session of the 13th Parliament, and this particular first session ranges from September to December 2022, is one of the papers that is set to be laid on the floor or to be tabled this afternoon, as well as a couple of reports from the Office of the Auditor General on how various state departments used their monies for the year ended 30th June 2018, 2016, 2019, as well as 2020. The approval of the Senate calendar for the first session of the 13th Parliament is under the notices of motion this afternoon that will be laid on the table this afternoon. The business of the Senate is about to kick off any moment from now. The Deputy Speaker of the Senate is in the chambers, and I'll hand you over so we can follow up on the live proceeding. Enjoy your viewing and good afternoon.
Ewe Mwenyezi Mungu, twakusihi tutazame kwa neema nyingi na baraka sisi watumishi wako ambao umeridhika kutuita kwa nyadhifa za uongozi katika jamhuri hii yetu. Twakuomba utujalie tuyatende na kufikiria mambo yote atakayofikishwa mbele yetu kwa njia ya haki na uaminifu, ili kustawisha amani, ufanisi na heri ya nchi yetu na wale ambao haja zao umezikabidhi mikononi mwetu. Honorable members, I've confirmed that we have quorum. Let's proceed.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Honorable Senator, can you make your way kindly? Honorable members, this is communication number 008 of 2022 concerning pupillage, internship, and attachment programs in the Senate. Honorable Senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon, 8 young men and women who are undertaking pupillage, attachment, and internship programs. The objective of these programs is to provide young people with first-hand experience in the legislative process and to expose them to the intricate world of public policy and public service. I request each person to stand when called out so that they may be acknowledged in the usual Senate tradition. They are, number 1, Kenneth Ouko, undertaking pupillage. Number 2, Kande Kelubo Moguche, undertaking pupillage. Number 3, Florence Muende Muinde, undertaking pupillage program. Number 4, Ekorere Ndaise Santana, undertaking pupillage. Number 5, Miranda Lawrence, undertaking an attachment program. Number 6, Emma Oginga, undertaking an attachment program. Number 7, Jeffrey Ojar, attachment program. Number 8, Maria Atwori, internship. On behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, I welcome you to the Senate and wish you well during the programs. I thank you. Yes, Honorable Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to just take a moment to welcome these young Kenyans that are undergoing one of the most important programs that we run as Parliament. I say this, Mr. Speaker, because this is one of our living legacies as members of the 4th PSC. This program, Mr. Speaker, is one of the most competitive in the country for pupillage programs. In fact, Mr. Speaker, if you speak to many young lawyers in the country, they'll tell you that despite Parliament not being considered, quote unquote, as what maybe many young people will consider as a prestigious posting in terms of a law firm or something, but this program has given opportunity to many, many young people to join the ranks of Parliament after having served and gained experience in this pupillage program. The way it is administered, Mr. Speaker, is such that we pick the best of the applicants after an interview from each of our 47 counties. We cannot pick 47 at a go. Therefore, it takes us actually 3 years to go through our entire list of 47 counties. So I do not know each of these pupils individually, but I bet, Mr. Speaker, that if you ask each of them, you will hardly find any 2 that are from the same county. Tells you that this program is administered by our very competent staff, members of staff who are well-ranking in the legal profession, and they are providing such a good opportunity and platform for young people to learn the workings of Parliament so that in future, in the course of their career, much as this may not arise on many occasions, but they may find a way that in the course of their work there is a demand for them to understand the operations of Parliament. And I have seen sometimes, Mr. Speaker, even when you follow proceedings in court, even very senior lawyers and senior counsels struggle about very basic operations of Parliament. Therefore, the gain that these students get from working in Parliament cannot be gainsaid, Mr. Speaker. So I congratulate them. I wish them well. I wish them success. May they be extremely hardworking in the things that they are doing, interact with members as freely as they can, and learn as much as they wish to during their 3-month stay, or I think 6 months within the institution. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Senators, it was not my intention actually or my plan to give comments to this communication, but allow me to give at least 2 more senators to make their comments, starting with Senator Makueni County, Maanzo, Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me a chance to welcome these young people to Senate and pledge. And I would like to tell them that as a lawyer, there's a lot to learn here, and the profession of law has very many branches and opportunities, including a lot of work process in Senate and the National Assembly, whereby there is a lot of law required to learn, and as a leader of majority has said, quite a number of people don't understand this branch of government and the drafty and the intrigues which go into the practice of law and the learning they are going to go through here. Mr. Speaker, I would like also like to say that Parliament, and when they sit here, these young people, they get to copy us, they get to learn from us, and they get role modeled from us. So I believe some of them are going to be good lawyers, and some of them will end up in this chamber as senators and as speaker. So I want to welcome them and congratulate them and wish them well in their career. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, thank you. I'm looking for an lawyer now to give a comment. I know you are a lawyer by profession, Honorable Cheptumo. What is out of order? And wait, just a minute, Honorable Senator Mohamed Faki, just a minute. I hope you have your standing orders with you, because you must give me the right standing order that you are quoting.
Mr. Speaker.
Okay.
I just wanted to...
which standing order? Which number are you...
allow me first, Mr. Speaker.
Do you want to contribute or to make a point of...
I'm not contributing.
Yes,
I'm surprised
proceed.
that my learned friend, Senator Manzo, who is a lawyer of repute, can allege in this house that they are bad and good lawyers. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Honorable Manzo, maybe... Do you want to withdraw? Not you want to withdraw because you know they are lawyers of good repute.
I'm just talking of
just
lawyers. I'm lawyers of good repute. We know in the Law Society of Kenya we have a disciplinary committee, and quite a number of lawyers have gone through that, having stolen people's property. I am encouraging the young lawyers to be good lawyers and to emulate good lawyers like the Honorable Faki.
Honorable Mwenda Gataya, Senator Tharaka County.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
Let's close at that, Honorable Senators.
Thank you, Chair. I am not a lawyer, but I know this house is composed of very many, very brilliant brains, and I'm sure the young people who are taking their pupillage from this house are going to harvest a lot from what I'm going to learn from here. I know if you really want to become a good lawyer like my brother Manso there, like my brother Tom, and any other person of that magnitude, this is the best ground from which these young people can learn. So, as a senator from Tharaka, I wish these young people well, because I'm very sure in the future they are going to find themselves in this house. So I wish you well, young people, and I hope you continue making some very serious visits so you can learn more. Thank you.
I've decided to give a few more members. Understand we should encourage these young professions. And also they get advice from seasoned lawyers like the senator for Kisumu County, Senator Professor. At least 2 minutes each, 2 minutes.
Yeah, I can.
Please, what is out of order, Honorable Chalgei? Just a moment,
Mr. Speaker,
Senator
Gerard was my student. He should respect his senior. Yeah, should respect his senior.
No, Honorable Chalgei, proceed.
I think Senator Dulo should stop intimidating people. She should be aware that she's on the minority side. She used to intimidate us then, but not now. Mr. Speaker, despite standing order number 1.
No, sit down. Have your seat, Professor. Senator
Mr. Speaker, just despite that you have power under standing order number 1 to allow seamless running of the House. Instead of, I have seen my colleagues from both aisle that they are raising their hands to catch their eye. I think to allow seamless running of the House, you should advise them to make a request. Because now, if
you're out of order. You know,
Mr.
I'm following a very elaborate list here on my left. And Honorable Chalgei, if you continue guiding me on how to present over this session,
no, Mr.
I think
Speaker,
you are treading on very dangerous grounds.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not guiding you. What I'm requesting is my colleagues to make requests when they want
They are
to
well
speak.
guided. Thank you.
Yeah.
They are well guided. Honorable Professor, Senator Kisumu County, Professor Jean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mine is to contribute to just encourage the students who are in Parliament today, in Senate today, because parliamentary practice, Mr. Speaker, sir, and especially learning the practice experientially from seeing how senators do their work, will add to the knowledge that the students require to learn. Mr. Speaker, sir, I am a law teacher, and I know that some of the students sitting in the gallery, I'm sure must have read some of the books that were published. Mr. Cherargei is smiling. And largely, I therefore encourage them, because this is the beginning of preparation for the practical undertaking of learning at the Kenya School of Law. When they finish their pupillage, I am sure they will be seeking employment in law firms and in other institutions, including Parliament. So I just want to encourage them, and it is good practice, Mr. Speaker, as the Leader of Majority has said, Leader of Majority until, of course, we change. He has advised them properly that this is an opportunity not just to learn, but also to interact and to engage with other professional colleagues. And since, Mr. Speaker, this is a program that is open to many Kenyans who have learned law, I expect, Mr. Speaker, that in future we diversify beyond those who are here of their time, so that we get people from different counties, so that this program goes on. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable, Senator Mungatana Danson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to join the previous speakers in congratulating the students who have come to join us. I'm sure they will have a good opportunity to learn. But, Mr. Speaker, the point I wanted to make in reference to the selection that the Leader of Majority mentioned is that when selecting the new lot of the students who are going to come on attachment, Mr. Speaker, we want the principle of equality to be applied. Mr. Speaker, I don't know whether you are hearing me, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I don't know whether you can hear me.
Yes, proceed, Senator Mungatana.
Yes, protect me from the other who are not giving you.
You are well protected.
Thank
proceed,
you, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, the point I was making is this. In the Senate of the US, where we borrow a lot from, even the chairs are measured such that the entire Senate people are equal. There's no tall person, there's no short person. It is the principle. So I want to emphasize this from the very beginning, Mr. Speaker, that all the counties are equal in this Senate. So when you are going to choose students, let us not be told these are the best students. So we come Nairobi, then Mombasa, then Kisumu. What about Tana River? Mr. Speaker, we want to see equality in this House. All the 47 counties. Mr. Speaker, I urge that the next lot should not repeat the same who are represented in this lot. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, but Senator Mugatana, you know this House does not decide who should join pupillage or attachment. Those decisions are not made from this floor. Maybe a different office is involved. Maybe that office should make sure that we have diversity of all the counties.
Mr. Speaker, without revisiting your direction, what I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, if I could clarify this issue, it's very important that if a student has been taken from Nairobi, the next lot, Mr. Speaker, in terms of weighting, in terms of those who should be selected, should be from other counties, should be circulatory.
I agree with you, Senator Mugatana. I agree with you, honestly. From this side, Senator Mazayo Stewart, the minority leader. Senator Ambua, do you want to mean that you are senior in this House than Senator Mazayo? Do you know that there is priority in contributing on Senator? Proceed, minority leader.
Yes, asante Bwana Speaker. Bwana Speaker, kitu cha kwanza nataka kutoa kongole kwa wale wanafunzi wote wanaofanya kazi hapa ndani ya bunge la Senate kwa hali ile ya kujifundisha vile bunge la Senate na kadri ya vile kazi zake zinavyoendelea, ili waweze kujifundisha wakati wakiwa wanaenda nje waweze kuwa wafanyikazi ambao watakuwa na uwezo wa kutekeleza majukumu yao. Bwana Speaker, tunaona ya kwamba pengine ningekubaliana na ndugu yangu Mugatana ya kwamba pia ingekuwa vyema kuona ya kwamba wanafunzi wanatoka katika sehemu mbalimbali katika taifa la Kenya. Tusiweze kuwaweka kutoka katika taifa moja peke yake. Lakini ni jambo muhimu sana kwa sababu Senate inapatiana nafasi wanafunzi wa Kikenya waje hapa ili wajionee viongozi wao katika utendakazi wao. Ili wakitoka hapa watakuwa wameweza kuwa na elimu ya kutosha ambayo itawasaidia katika maisha yao. Bwana Speaker, vile vile nataka kusema kwamba ni jambo zuri ikiwa hii bunge la Senate litaweza kuonesha mfano, kwa sababu sisi kama viongozi ndani ya taifa la Kenya ni umuhimu na majukumu yetu kuonyesha wale watakaokuja baada ya sisi ya kwamba njia ya kuelekea ni kama hii. Kwa hiyo nataka kuishukuru sana hili bunge la Senate. Nataka kushukuru sana hili ndugu zangu maseneta, manake ninajua wanakutana sana na hawa vijana na mara kwa mara wanaweza kupeana maoni, na tutaendelea kuwafundisha, tutaendelea kuwa nao, na nina hakika wakitoka hapa elimu yao itawasaidia katika siku zijazo. Asante Bwana Speaker.
Asante sana. Senator William Cheptumo. And then we do one last one from
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I really want to support this program of our students in Kenya School of Law through the program of pupillage is being taken in this House. Mr. Speaker, over the years, the intake of students to the university, especially on law degree, has increased substantially. And the number of practicing lawyers, Mr. Speaker, and my colleagues will confirm this. My answer will do so. My classmate, Professor Ochenda, will also confirm the same, that indeed now we are unable to take all the students for pupillage. And so, Mr. Speaker, I think this program is important, and I would want to urge Honorable Majority Leader, who seem to be consulting here, that I propose that you increase the number from 15 annually, Mr. Speaker, to say 47, if space will allow, so that at least every year we will have a pupil from every county. That, Mr. Speaker, will deal with two situations. One, it will deal with the numbers that are enlarging every other year. Those of us who practice law and we have law firms, Mr. Speaker, we sometimes have problems. We receive about 20 students, wanting to be admitted for pupillage. We take one, we take two, and others actually remain without opportunities. So I would really have.
Give him 30 seconds to finish.
So I propose that we increase the number. And I want to encourage our young people that this is really the way to go. We were like you before. I was in your situation in 1989, and today I'm a senator here. You can still be great leaders in this country, and I want to encourage you to work hard and to take this program seriously. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The last one, Senate Deputy Minority Leader.
Yeah, that's okay. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to join you and my colleagues in welcoming the students who are here on internship. Mr. Speaker, I think for the record, we need to clarify a point to this country, that the students here are not just attending pupillage, that they are different disciplines. They are all not lawyers, there are also other disciplines that are undergoing internship. And for the benefit of us all, and for the benefit of those who may want to apply, I think the burden of deciding who joins this program and who does not join this program is not a burden of the Senate. I think it's a burden that lies elsewhere. Mr. Speaker, having said that, I just want to make an observation. And the Speaker, if you allow me, standing order number 1, it gives you, the Speaker, a lot of latitude and discretion. The Speaker, always that standing order number 1, I beg that it should be read alongside standing order number 2. That whatever decisions are made from the chair, then those decisions shall be based on the Constitution of Kenya, on statute law, on usages, on forms, on precedents, customs, procedures, and traditions of the Parliament of Kenya. That will be important, and it will help us to transact business in a more dignified manner in this Senate. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next order.
Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
Senate Majority Leader, you have a couple of papers today. Take enough water, or your deputy should be beside you to give you additional bottles. Proceed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the Senate today, 5th of October 2022. It's quite a lengthy one, about 40 papers actually, 40. Number 1, the Senate calendar, that's for regular sessions for the first session of the 13th Parliament, September to December 2022. 2, report of the Auditor General of the financial statements of Bomet County Assembly, Car Loans and Mortgage Scheme Fund for the year ended 30th June 2015. 3, report of the Auditor General on financial statements of Baringo County Assembly, Members Car Loan Fund for the year ended 30th June 2015. 4, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Bomet County Assembly, Car Loan and Mortgage Scheme Fund for the year ended 30th June 2016. 5, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Bomet County Assembly, Car Loan and Mortgage Scheme for the year ended 30th June 2017. 6, Mr. Speaker, report of the Auditor General for financial statements of Narok County Assembly, Car Loan and Mortgage Scheme Fund for the year ended 30th June 2018. 7, report of the Auditor General of the financial statements of Nyandarua County Emergency Fund for the year ended 30th June 2018. 8, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Nyandarua County Executive Committee members Car Loan and Mortgage Scheme Fund for the year ended 30th June 2018. 9, report of the Auditor General on the car financial statements for Baringo County Assembly members Car Loan and Mortgage Fund for the year ended 30th June 2018. 10, report of the Auditor General on financial statements of Baringo County Assembly Catering and Health Services Scheme Fund for the year ended 30th June 2018. 11, report of the Auditor General on financial statements for Baringo County Assembly Catering and Health Services Scheme Fund for the year ended 30th June 2019. 12, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the Nyandarua County Assembly MCA Car Loan and Mortgage Fund for the year ended 30th June 2019. 13, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Nyandarua County Assembly Staff Car Loan and Mortgage Fund for the year ended 30th June 2019. 14, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the Nyandarua County Assembly Bursary Fund for the year ended 30th June 2019. 15, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Nyandarua County Assembly Civil Servants Car Loan and Mortgage Scheme Fund for the year ended 30th June 2019. 16, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Nakuru County Bursary Fund for the year ended 30th June 2019. 17, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Bungoma County Assembly Trade Development Loan Fund for the year ended 30th June 2019. 18, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Bungoma County Assembly Emergency Fund for the year ended 30th June 2019. 19, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Samburu County Assembly Staff Mortgage and Scheme Fund for year ended 30th June 2019. 20th, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Samburu County Assembly Youth and Women Enterprise Development Fund for the year ended 30th June 2019. 21, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Samburu County Assembly Persons Living with Disability Fund for the year ended 30th June 2020. 22, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Isiolo County Education Bursary Fund for the year ended 30th June 2019. 23, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Isiolo County Education Bursary Fund for the year ended 30th June 2020. 24, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Trans Nzoia County Youth and Women Development Fund for the year ended 30th June 2019. 25, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Trans Nzoia County Youth and Women Development Fund for the year ended 30th June 2020. 26, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Bomet County Assembly Car Loan and Mortgage Scheme Fund for the year ended 30th June 2019. 27, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Bomet County Assembly Car Loan and Mortgage Scheme for the year ended 30th June 2020. 28, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Narok County Assembly Car Loan and Mortgage Scheme Fund for the year ended 30th June 2019. 29, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Narok County Assembly Car Loan and Mortgage Scheme Fund for the year ended 30th June 2020. 30, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Vihiga County Economic Fund, County Community Empowerment Fund for the year ended 30th June 2019. 31, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Nairobi County Assembly Mortgage Scheme Fund for the year ended 30th June 2019. 32, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Marsabit County Assembly Car Loan and Mortgage Scheme Fund for the year ended 30th June 2020. 33, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of West Pokot County Assembly Staff Car Loan and Mortgage Fund for the year ended 30th June 2020. 34, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Kitui County Textile Center for the year ended 30th June 2020. 35, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Bungoma County Disaster and Emergency Fund for the year ended 30th June 2020. 36, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Trans Nzoia County Nawiri Fund for the year ended 30th June 2020. 37, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Trans Nzoia County Elimu Bursary Fund for the year ended 30th June 2020. 38, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Kitale Municipality for the year ended 30th June 2020. 39, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Embu County Water and Sanitation Company Limited for the year ended 30th June 2020. 40, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Embu Water and Sanitation Company Limited for the year ended 30th June 2020. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay.
Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Majority Leader. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to
Leave
give
them together.
I beg to give notice of the following motions, Mr. Speaker. Number 1, that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 27.6, that the thanks of the Senate be recorded for the exposition of public policy contained in the address of the President during the opening of the 13th Parliament, delivered on Thursday, the 29th of September, 2022. 2, Mr. Speaker, approval of Senate calendar for the first session of the 13th Parliament, that pursuant to Standing Order number 32.1, that the Senate approves its calendar, regular sessions, for the first session of the 13th Parliament, September to December 2022, be laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 5th October 2022. Thank you.
Next order.
Order number 7, statements. Order number 8, procedural motion, limitation of debate on motions.
It seems today the majority leader, you have quite a bit to do. Proceed to move the procedural motion.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that, pursuant to Standing Order 111.1, that the Senate resolves that debate on a motion not sponsored by a majority or minority party or a committee shall be limited in the following manner. A maximum of 3 hours with not more than 20 minutes for the mover, 20 minutes for the majority party official responder, 20 minutes for the minority party official responder, and 15 minutes for each of the other senator speaking, and that 15 minutes before the time expires, the mover shall be called upon to reply. Mr. Speaker, this is a procedural motion. I know maybe just by way of mention, at the beginning of a term of new parliament, just like right now, we do many of such motions so that we lay the ground rules on what to follow procedure each time there's similar motions such as the one that I have just read before the House, Mr. Speaker. It's a fairly straightforward matter. I don't expect a contest like we had yesterday. In fact, the challenge to Senator Faki is that since as part of this induction process, Mr. Speaker, we showed our new colleagues how protracted debate can be on this House. Let us show them also how peaceful and amicable we can coexist sometimes today in the course of our business, Mr. Speaker. This being a straightforward matter, Mr. Speaker, and we have many such, I think about 2 that we expect to do today on limitation of time, basically ensuring that when there is a motion that has been sponsored, how much time can an individual take? Limitations of time for majority leader, minority leader, the mover, the responder. So it's important that our colleagues get to acquaint themselves with these rules. It's displayed on our tablets. If you want to keep record and know for how many minutes you can speak on a particular matter, the same has been availed on the tablets that are before each senator, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, I don't want to take long. Mr. Speaker, I beg that my colleague, the leader of minority, to second.
Leader of minority.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a procedural motion. Mr. Speaker, I second.
Thank you. Honorable Senators, I propose the question that pursuant to Standing Order 111.1, the Senate resolves that debate on a motion not sponsored by the majority or minority party or a committee shall be limited in the following manner. A maximum of 3 hours with not more than 20 minutes for the mover, 20 minutes for the majority party official responder, 20 minutes for the minority party official responder, and 15 minutes for each other senator speaking, and that 15 minutes before the time expires, the mover shall be called upon to reply. Is that the mood? If that is the direction you are taking, then, Honorable Senators, I put the question that pursuant to Standing Order 111.1, the Senate resolves that debate on a motion not sponsored by the majority or minority party or a committee shall be limited in the following manner. A maximum of 3 hours with not more than 20 minutes for the mover, 20 minutes for the majority party official responder, 20 minutes for the minority party official responder, and 15 minutes for each other senator speaking, and that 15 minutes before the time expires, the mover shall be called upon to reply. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? Then the ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 9, procedural motion, limitation of debate on adjournment motion.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that notwithstanding the provisions of Standing Order number 110.4, that debate on any motion for the adjournment of the Senate to a day other than the next normal sitting day in accordance with the calendar of the Senate shall be limited to a maximum of 2 hours with not more than 15 minutes for each senator speaking, after which the Senate shall proceed to adjourn without question put, provided that when the period of recess proposed by any such motion does not exceed 90 calendar days, the debate shall be limited to a maximum of 30 minutes and shall be confined to the question of adjournment. This is a very important one, Mr. Speaker. You know, the reason why we set out this one, complete with the rules, is that one time, Mr. Speaker, when we had difficult times in this House, somebody moved an adjournment motion, and they didn't have a specific number of days for which they wanted the House to adjourn. Therefore, they abused the notice and the notice of motion. They abused, actually, the provisions of the standing order, Mr. Speaker, and the House almost went on a long recess while it was in the middle of a very busy time for Parliament. Especially, I think actually it must have been around the budget time between February and April. Therefore, I like the provisions of the standing order that expressly provides for how long this recess that is achieved through this motion, which is separate from the normally provided recess in our Senate calendar, Mr. Speaker, can be, that it can only be a maximum of 3 months. I don't foresee any such situation. This is the beginning of a new session of Parliament. People are anxious. They want to present bills before this House. I don't foresee any of this happening. But like I said in the previous motion, Mr. Speaker, it is important that we lay the ground rules. These are the rules that will guide us for the next 5 years. Therefore, as colleague senators, it's important that before giving your aye of approval or your nay of denial for any motions that you are doing as a procedure motion, please read and understand, first of all, what you are signing up to. This is actually akin to the signing of a contract. I'd further wish to request something before I resume my seat, Mr. Speaker. I know in the normal traditions and nature of the House that we normally don't debate motions of procedure. But we have said, just like you allowed graciously when you are welcoming the pupils that are before Parliament, Mr. Speaker, 2 or 3 people to still have a chance to speak on it, despite it being a procedural motion. It's important that we allow and acquaint our colleagues who are still learning the curves and the ways of doing procedures of this House. Let them have a chance to speak. Parliament is a place for people speaking. I am not a fan of this business of the mood of the House is that we pass. Why? We came here to speak, debate, raise something, whatever is the mood. So, Mr. Speaker, because I want to, I can see my colleague Senator Wambua is probably not being handled very well by the moods or the situation that he finds himself in this afternoon. I want to grant him the opportunity to second this motion, perhaps say the many things that he was saying earlier to you. You remember earlier when you gave him a chance to speak, Mr. Speaker, instead of welcoming visitors, he went on a long rant about why you need to observe standing orders and be firm. I can see now that he has brightened up a bit, Mr. Speaker, and he will do a good job. So I want to request my good friend, the pastor from Kitui, Senator Enokio Wambua, to second this motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, Senator Wambua. Then Deputy Majority Leader.
Majority, okay.
Or Minority Leader, sorry. Minority Leader. You wish, eh? I withdraw. Minority Leader.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, from the onset, I want to second the procedural motion on a limitation of time. And Mr. Speaker, just hasten to say that there's a reason why we would have limitation of time on debates, on motions, on bills, and on every matter that comes to the floor of this House. Because, Mr. Speaker, I think this comes from a tradition before this principle of limitation was introduced, where members would speak on one issue for 3 hours. At times, the intentions are not even pure, but now that we have limitation, then it also guides us and it makes us be able to efficiently use the time of the Senate. So, Mr. Speaker, I support, and as I support, you know, the majority leader is a ranking member in this House, and he does a lot of good things in this House, apart from just bringing the business of the state, the government, to the floor of the Senate. As Speaker, I have a strong feeling that when you looked at those names of those brilliant students that have been nominated for internship in Parliament, you know, this time round there is serious observation of gender issues, you know, and that I can tell you for sure, Mr. Speaker, knowing Senator Cheruiyot and his passion for gender issues, he must have had a hand in making sure that we have more ladies than men in this internship. The Speaker, I second and I congratulate the PSC, outgoing PSC representative of the Senate, for doing a good job in this election. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Senators, I propose the question that, notwithstanding the provisions of Standing Order 110.4, the debate on any motion for the adjournment of the Senate to any other than the next normal sitting day in accordance with the calendar of the Senate shall be limited to a maximum of 2 hours with not more than 15 minutes for each senator speaking, after which the Senate shall adjourn without question put. Provided that when the period of recess proposed by any such motion has not exceeded 9 calendar days, the debate shall be limited to a maximum of 30 minutes and shall be confined to the question of adjournment. I can see from my list a few members. I don't know whether they want to contribute to this motion, procedural motion. Okay. Senator Medu? Okay, wait, Senator Medu, just a minute. Senator for Nairobi County.
Mr. Speaker, I'm a bit
My senator when I'm in Nairobi, okay, proceed.
Yes, Karibu Nairobi, Mr. Speaker. Reading from the motion on the order paper, it makes reference to Standing Order 110.4. My copy of the standing orders has 111.4 as the order dealing with the limitation of... do I have the wrong document? Okay. And it also talks about 9 calendar days, and I had the majority leader refer to 90 days. That's a clarification. That's a clarification I was seeking. Thank you, Speaker.
That's correct, and maybe 9 calendar days. For the answer and purposes, majority, can you collect that 9 with?
Mr. Speaker, I meant 9 days. If I said 90, the correct number is 9, not 90. Calendar days.
Thank you. Senator Medu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And from the onset, you have to bear with the Leader of Majority, Senator for Kericho. 9 and 90 are, close to each other. The tongue can spell 9 and 90 almost synonymously, but then we just have to, that is where it comes from. Now, Mr. Speaker, as I rise to support the procedural motion, as has been brought by the Leader of Majority, I think there is something that I've looked and liked from the proposal, and I'm finding 15 minutes for a senator enough to prosecute their case, that I'll be able to prosecute my case and that of the people of Jadala that I'm representing in here. Our colleagues from the lower house, the National Assembly, have only 5 minutes to contribute. So 15 minutes is sufficient for all of us, and the 20 minutes that have been proposed. So, Mr. Speaker, as I support this motion, I would wish to say that from my experience, the time that we've gotten to speak here, we only get about 3, 4, 5 minutes, and we're able to prosecute our cases. So 15 minutes is enough to have us move forward. So I thank you very much, and I support.
Okay, let me give one more senator from this end, senator nominated, Tsengo Kaluda Mbete. Because I can see you have requested to contribute. And if you have nothing, do you want to continue? That's your wish. I don't want to ambush you,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think what has been said is sufficient enough. The only thing I can add is what Senator Methu said, 9 and 90. Those are 2 different words. Thank you.
Okay, honorable senators, I put the question that notwithstanding the provisions of Standing Order 110.4, the debate on any motion for the adjournment of the Senate to a day other than the next normal sitting day in accordance with the calendar of the Senate shall be limited to a maximum of 2 hours with not more than 15 minutes for each senator speaking, after which the debate shall adjourn without question put. Provided that when the period of recess proposed by any such motion does not exceed 9 calendar days, the debate shall be limited to a maximum of 30 minutes and shall be confined to the question of adjournment. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 10, procedural motion. Limitation of debate on motion on the address by the President.
Senate Majority Leader. Deputy Senate Majority Leader.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that pursuant to Standing Order 27-6, the Senate resolves that the debate on the motion on the presidential address shall be limited to a maximum of 3 sitting days, with not more than 15 minutes for each senator speaking, excluding the mover in moving and replying, who shall be limited to 30 minutes in either case, and that the senator majority leader and the Senate minority leader shall be limited to 30 minutes each. I request Senator Fatuma Ndulu to second.
Senator Fatuma Ndulu.
Mr. Speaker, I second.
Thank you.
Honorable Senators, I propose the question that pursuant to Standing Order 27-6, the Senate resolves that the debate on the motion on the presidential address shall be limited to a maximum of 3 sitting days, with not more than 15 minutes for each senator speaking, excluding the mover in moving and replying, who shall be limited to 30 minutes in either case, and that the Senate majority leader and the Senate minority leader shall be limited to 30 minutes each. Okay, thank you. Honorable Senators, I put the question that pursuant to Standing Order 27-6, the Senate resolves that the debate on the motion of the presidential address shall be limited to a maximum of 3 sitting days, with not more than 15 minutes for each senator speaking, excluding the mover in moving and replying, which shall be limited to 30 minutes in either case, and that the Senate majority leader and the Senate minority leader shall be limited to 30 minutes each. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 11, motion. Debate on the address by His Excellency the President during the opening of the 13th Parliament, first day.
Majority Leader and member for Kericho County, Senator Harun Chiruyot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order number 27-6, the thanks of the Senate be recorded for the exposition of the public policy contained in the address of the President during the opening of the 13th Parliament delivered on Thursday, the 29th of September, 2022, be hereby recorded, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this was a very important day. Many of us were happy about it because we had been assured that we will never see such a day. But who is God in heaven? You know, when we left this chamber, Mr. Speaker, a few days to the general election, in fact, many of us had come here to transact. I can't remember what the exact business was. I think, yeah, it was a motion actually for the House to formally adjourn for that synod. And you remember how my colleagues on the minority side on that particular day were excited, exuberant, sure that they had the system. We promised them that we had the people and God. The fact that we are here today referring to this particular speech and moved on that particular day has reminded all of us that elections are like a sine wave. You never know when it will toss you up. You never know when it will toss you down. But as we were so well reminded on that particular day, Mr. Speaker, elections are firmly behind us. It is now time to close ranks. We have a very serious agenda before us. We have a country as a leadership of this House, Mr. Speaker, as a leadership actually rather of the country, Kenyans are looking up to us to solve many, many, many issues that continue to bedevil them. Mr. Speaker, as many of our colleagues will come to learn, perhaps those who are joining in Parliament for the very first time, is that this issue of majority, minority, opposition, government, only exists in our minds as leaders. On many occasions, if you're gathered even in social gatherings, and people continue, members of a family or friends, they ask you questions about the things that bother them as a country, and they look at you as a leader. They, in most cases, will not be so much bothered about which side of the political divide you come from. They look up to you to provide direction, to provide leadership, and the excuse that, oh, you know, we are not in government, or the other reason, it is the executive, it's not us in the legislature that are supposed to do this or that, rarely holds true in such discussions, Mr. Speaker. On many occasions, they'll demand that because we have been granted the opportunity by the people of Kenya, our constituents, the people that gave us a chance and the platform to be in this House, to speak, represent them, legislate, oversight the executive, and ensure that we leave a country that is better than we found it when we first came to this House, Mr. Speaker. It was on that account, Mr. Speaker, that the President, His Excellency President William Samoei Ruto, came before the House, Mr. Speaker, a joint sitting of both houses of Parliament, and laid his agenda, an initial one, of what he intends to do for the country and what he considers to be important for us as legislators. Remember, in a democracy such as ours, Mr. Speaker, on many occasions, we'll find that even a popularly elected president, without the support of the legislature, will find themselves in a very difficult place, and you're not actually likely to deliver unless you have the thumb of approval from the legislature. Actually, Mr. Speaker, if the legislature, and perhaps more than even the judiciary on many occasions, because for the judiciary, unless somebody files a petitions or complain about things that the executive is doing, they are innocent bystanders to what the executive is doing. But we as parliamentarians, we have the singular honor of interrogating every business that the executive busies themselves with, from the day that we joined this particular House, Mr. Speaker, up to the last day. And on many occasions, many colleagues perhaps right now are yet to realize that actually when proper work begins, Mr. Speaker, and you find statements being laid before this House with requests for exposure, or even members of the public raising issues via petitions, that all of us in this House will speak with one voice. We will demand from the executive that they do that which they promise. The fact that we sit on the left or the right of the House, Mr. Speaker, is a very small matter, Mr. Speaker. We know very well that what ranks atop the work of a legislature Mr. Speaker, is to represent your people and ensure that any time there are challenges, and there will be many challenges across as we move on this journey of leadership, Mr. Speaker, that we demand the best from our people, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, the President laid a speech. I'll give a few highlights, Mr. Speaker, of the things that I considered or struck me out of his presentation before the joint sitting of the Houses, Mr. Speaker, and raise my thoughts on the same. I expect that colleague senators also will take time to read, understand what the President was saying, and speak about it, because we are duty-bound and we have it in our standing orders. The last motion that we just passed, Mr. Speaker, gives each senator at least 15 minutes to give your reaction to whatever was said, whether you agree with him, you completely disagree with him. The same is contained in this speech, and I have seen hard copies of the same being circulated, and soft copies are in the tablets that are before each and every member of this House, Mr. Speaker. And this is very important. Of course, in his beginning, Mr. Speaker, he noted that for the first time, this is a parliament that has had as many as 193 members of the National Assembly, and I think 17 senators re-elected back to this House. That has not happened, Mr. Speaker, under the new constitution before. We have such a high attrition rate as members of parliament, Mr. Speaker, that it was getting actually to a place where being a member of parliament in Kenya was about to be added to the list of 1,000 quickest way to die. Because you know what happens when you're a member of parliament, yet after every 5 years, when you have to face the electorate, if your chances of survival are only 20 or 30%, then this is not the kind of job that many people will have picked. But with this kind, 17 out of 47 works up to slightly close to 30%, Mr. Speaker. It's an improvement, Mr. Speaker, and I hope in the coming days, actually, because when you follow, if you're a keen follower of many legislatures, Mr. Speaker, especially those that are bicameral in nature, like the one we have in our country, the upper house, that is the Senate, is actually a house that retains the best that it has to offer in terms of leadership. On many occasions, actually, is a holding place before people proceed on either to presidency or higher level other than the work of a legislator. And the fact that many of our colleagues were voted back, Mr. Speaker, 17, is good testament that the country is beginning to appreciate. For those that faced re-election, especially the 2017 election, Mr. Speaker, there was a huge debate in the country. What is the work of a senator? You know, on many occasions, you had to defend yourself because this whole Senate business was new to the Kenyan voter. And they were wondering. Many occasions, Mr. Speaker, you know, many of us would go to functions in the first Senate under this current constitution. And you have the governor there, they'll arise to speak and mention, you know, I brought this and that development to this particular area. Then the member of the National Assembly will arise and say, good people of this village, you know, this classroom was built by myself. Then finally they say, oh, good people, let us also now welcome our senator to say something. And there you'd be speaking about oversight, which was completely strange. What is this animal called oversight? And on many occasions, to the ordinary voter, they consider senators to be joyriders or idlers who go to Nairobi to disappear and come back after 5 years to be given another chance. That seemed to be waning off in the minds of Kenyan voters. They are beginning to appreciate the place of the Senate, and I appreciate that, and that can be seen in the number of senators that were re-elected back. I want to believe, Mr. Speaker, that as a House, if we pull together, if we execute as per our constitutional mandate, hold governors to account, hold the executive to account, ensure that we devolve as much as possible of the national resources to our counties and partner with our county assemblies so that people can begin to enjoy even more the fruits of devolution, then as many, it is possible even to have more than 50% of those of us that will seek the office of a senator elected back to this House. So therefore, it was just a good celebration. Of course, Mr. Speaker, as has been mentioned earlier, you know very well that the President is a champion actually for the gender inclusion in leadership. And this has been noted in his speech as well, that as an improvement, in 2017, the 12th Parliament, Mr. Speaker, we had only 23 women elected into single constituencies. The National Assembly now has 29 women elected into single constituencies. That's a good improvement. It's unfortunate that as a Senate, we did not increase actually or have a growth in terms of the number of women senators that were elected. We had 3 last term, we have 3 this term as well. I wish that as we continue to place Senate in its rightful place, we can convince Kenyans to vote in as many women to be senators actually. Do we have 4? I'm being reminded that we have 4. Or we had 4 last time. Actually, yeah, when we added Senator Agnes Kavindu, we actually had 4. So it's a downgrade actually, and something to be worried about as senators, because now we have 3 only, Mr. Speaker. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the President moved on to remind us about our duty as members of Parliament, where the nexus is drawn between us and the agenda that he has for the people. Of course, there was a moment of celebration, Mr. Speaker, because unlike in the past, and I agree with him, Mr. Speaker, that there was a paradigm shift in this election. And many of our colleagues actually were elected on the basis of a promise that they gave to the electorate more than just being party loyalists to a particular. The decoration that you see, I think in terms of as many parties as possible. We have senators elected on independent. We have a senator like Okiya Omtata elected on an unaligned political party that's not aligned to any of the major coalition. And even in the 2 sides of the House, Mr. Speaker, you have senators elected on different political parties. This points to the maturity that the Kenyan voter continues to show in every election. The fact that for a long time, we have always yearned and said, is it possible to have an issue-based political contest, such that at the end of the electoral process, you are able to point out to the country and say who won, which ideological divide sold and gave out or resonated mostly with the voters and the people of Kenya, to a point that they were able to agree with them and grant them leadership of a country, Mr. Speaker. That is celebrated, noted, and it's something that we need to be proud of, and perhaps even grow it, Mr. Speaker, something that we need to grow, because I believe that for those who have been in the political circles longer than myself, there are many people here who've been in this field longer. They know that when this journey began, Kenya began actually from a single-party state. And for a long time, of course, through the journey of multi-party, ensuring that people are voted in now in as many parties as possible, to now going to the next step, that even amongst us, you can be within a similar political party, but represent a particular ideology, represent a particular thinking that may not necessarily agree to the general view or what is common thinking amongst the people that you campaign with, and people listen to you and grant the opportunity to lead. That is something that was tested and proved during this particular election, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the President also gave us his commitment and read out something that is quite assuring. It's not every day that you hear President speak the words and give the commitment that they commit to be loyal, hardworking, devoted, President of every Kenyan. This has been a testament. You have seen actually, Mr. Speaker, that in his visits, Mr. Speaker, the President has actually on 2 or 3 occasions visited regions that did not necessarily give him the sign of approval, that they never voted for him. But as part of spreading his message and ensuring that we build together, close rank, have the political divides that existed before the election firmly behind us, and speaking and engaging Kenyans. It's assuring to hear a president. It's not an everyday occurrence. Say that I will be president for us. Of course, the challenge now to us as members of parliament, as the legislature, is to hold him to account so that we ensure that on every government program that is given, we don't want it to see it skewed towards any particular region, so that there are people who feel as if they are less Kenyans than others. This is something that we shall hold the president to account, but at least I celebrate him. You know, it begins by first voicing it, admitting that there are people who may not necessarily have voted for you and don't see you as their president, but saying, nonetheless, regardless of that particular situation, I'll still ensure that as I undertake my duties, as I execute my programs, as I run my development agenda, every Kenyan will feel part and parcel of this particular country, and none will feel that they are left out. That's something worth applauding, Mr. Speaker. Of course, then he moved on to lay the legislative agenda, Mr. Speaker, in this particular House, knowing that we have the long-standing issue between us and the National Assembly on which bills are supposed to come to the Senate, which ones can be prosecuted by the National Assembly without particular reference to this particular House. I listened to him. I've had occasion to privately also, Mr. Speaker, hear him commit and say that this protracted battle that has existed for the last 2 sessions of Parliament is not helpful to us as a country, that we need to lay this matter to rest, even as we await either the Supreme Court to make a determination, or even for members of the National Assembly to listen to the good reason of the senators. There's nothing that having a second eye, that is a different house from the house that laid out a particular bill, speak to it, add their voice, make it better, make particular changes. There is nothing wrong with that being done to a particular bill, Mr. Speaker. It doesn't reduce their authority as a house. In any case, if it's about resources, because that's the source of the biggest battle, Mr. Speaker, none of us has ever insisted that we want to do the national budget. As Senate, we always busy ourselves with division of revenue. Once it has been divided between the 2 levels of government, our next point of debate with them has been how much goes to the county, specifically each and everyone. So, Mr. Speaker, I hope as we conclude on this particular process, Mr. Speaker, either by ruling of a court or by consent, we can settle this matter as soon as even before this particular session of Parliament comes to an end, so that as we begin, Mr. Speaker, the new calendar year, we know very well what is the place of Senate, what is the place of National Assembly, and we can focus on that which matter for the ordinary citizen, Mr. Speaker. The ordinary citizen isn't bothered about which is the upper house, which is the lower house, who is supposed to consider the budget issues. What they want to see are tangible results, their lives being better, their vote counting, their vote having a meaningful proposition to them waking up early and giving us the chance to lead them, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, it's something quite worth considering, Mr. Speaker. Consequently, Mr. Speaker, the President did request something quite important also. Paragraph 16 of his speech, that through our standing orders, if we can consider allowing cabinet secretaries to actually explain government policy and answer questions on the floor of our House. Mr. Speaker, if there will be a bigger beneficiary to this policy, and senators who have been in this House previously will know that this will be quite important to us, is that in the course of time, you will realize that on many occasions, when a cabinet secretary has been invited before the National Assembly and the Senate, Senator Moses Kajwang will tell you where they are most likely to go and why. Therefore, if this is included, and we succeed to convince both houses, and I don't see a reason why we cannot do this, it will be important to face our colleagues in cabinet and have them appear before this House. We set time for them, either a morning or an afternoon, and you ask them issues about your constituency, things that are dear to your constituents, other than just being in an enclosed session of a committee. On many occasions, you know how much we have struggled. In fact, towards the end of the last term of Senate, I can count on one hand how many ministers used to honor summons to this particular House of the Senators. Therefore, if there will be a beneficiary actually to this particular policy shift, should we agree with the request of the President, it will be the Senate, Mr. Speaker, so that we get a chance to interrogate these ministers. Let them come and stand where I'm standing, so that members can question them, members can demand of them answers, and members can have the opportunity actually to raise and have a personal touch and personal connection with each and every minister, because it's not specified. I think the olive branch that was being extended was not to, there's no debate about only the ministers that have got functions that are devolved functions or any kind of debate, anything of that matter, Mr. Speaker. This is extremely important, and I look forward to us as a leadership, when we get the opportunity to review this, to agree with him, so that we, as soon as cabinet is in place, they can come to this House and respond to all our questions, explain policy. We challenge them on some of the things that we don't agree with, because I do not believe for a fact that it is possible to run a country where for every policy decision that the government takes, despite, I don't mind being informed by my neighbor, a senator for Nyamira, Mr. Speaker. In any case, if he wrongly informs me, I'll block his way home to Nyamira. So.
Okay, he has accepted that information. Kindly inform me.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me the opportunity to inform the Honorable Leader of Majority, my neighbor from the county of Kericho. Mr. Speaker, the member is creating the impression that the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya has not created an enabling constitutional framework for cabinet secretaries to appear before the House and respond to all the queries that this House may wish them to clarify. But I wanted to inform the majority leader that that issue is adequately addressed by the provisions of Article 153, sub-Article 3. Mr. Speaker, if you may permit me, Article 153 states that a cabinet secretary shall, the word used is shall, attend before a committee of the Senate when required by the committee and answer any question concerning a matter for which the cabinet secretary is responsible. So I wanted to inform the member. Sorry. Mr. Speaker, I've permission of the majority leader that I inform you. That's how business runs here. Senator for Bomet, nominated senator. So, my neighbor, I wanted to inform you that even without amending the standing orders, the Constitution already has a very clear framework for CSS to appear before us. Mr. Speaker, what I should be hearing from the majority leader is that the president should tell his incoming CSS to respect the Senate. And anytime we summon them to appear before us, they appear before us. So the issue is discipline of CSS, not inadequacy of the provisions in the Constitution to enable us summon the CSS.
Senator nominated Joyce Kolil. Why interrupting the Honorable Senator for Nyamira? You know, the senator was being informed is the majority leader, and he has not actually complained that he has not been informed. He is very comfortable that he has been informed, and yeah, so nobody should. Okay, proceed, majority leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I only allowed Senator Omogeni because one is my neighbor, and two lawyers refer to him as senior counsel. But little did I know that senior counsel can misinform as well, because I'm afraid what he gave me was misinformation, not information. If he bothers to read the speech of the president, there is no impression whatsoever that the president actually suggests in any way that members of his cabinet will not honor or respect this house. But read paragraph 16 of his speech on what is a proposition and what value. Senator Omogeni, you have been in this house, and you know very well what value we draw every time we have had what ordinarily, because this is akin to a committee of the whole, where we have all of us as senators.
Majority leader, there are two interventions here. One actually has been here for quite some time from the distinguished senator for Kisumu County. Are you on intervention or you want to contribute? Then the second one is Honorable Bone Karole, the majority whip. Yes, proceed.
Mr. Speaker, the principle of a member being responsible for the accuracy of his statement in this House is a cardinal principle.
What is standing order? Are you
point of order. I'm on the point of order as a result of the utterances by Senator Omogeni. Mr. Speaker, if I may, number two, it is important that the records of this House record nothing but facts. Mr. Speaker, if Omogeni, who is a senior counsel, can fail to read and understand the provisions of the Constitution, then what are we saying about the teaching of law at the University of Nairobi? Mr. Speaker, Article 153. Mr. Speaker, Article 153. Mr. Speaker, Article 153 of the Constitution speaks through the mandatory.
You know, is on a point of order. Let him clear his
you'll
point
respond.
of order. Then I'll give you time to respond to that allegation, because you know they are pupils. Our students are in pupillage, and yes. You must really clear that here completely.
Yes. Mr. Speaker,
maybe 30 seconds, please.
Mr. Speaker, it's a very important issue. The senior counsel has read to us, and we thank him, Article 153. 3. It says mandatory, the cabinet secretary shall attend committees. Committees. Mr. Speaker, our understanding is that both the President and Senator Jeriot are addressing the lacuna where cabinet secretaries are not able to face the whole House. Mr. Speaker, I'm standing on a point of order that the honorable member be asked to retract his statement because it is not based on fact. And two, Mr. Speaker, he apologizes to Kenyans and the Law Society of Kenya for his inability to read and understand the Constitution of Kenya.
Senator Tom Ojenda, just 2 minutes to clear that issue.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I have known a senator for Kakamega, Senator Kalwale, as a fairly experienced senator. But I'm surprised, Mr. Speaker, that the senator does not seem to understand that even a Senate sitting can sit as a whole committee of the House. That's a basic principle that is there in our Constitution, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, there is nothing out of order on the article one I've read to this House. That's Article 153, Mr. Speaker. And that article, Mr. Speaker, is broad, is liberal. It gives leeway to this House to summon a cabinet secretary to appear before the House and answer any question which the cabinet secretary is responsible. And the point I was trying to bring to the floor of the House is that that article is adequate. It gives power to this House to summon any CS to appear before the House and respond to any issue. Honorable Kalwale, even if you interpret this article and read it in Kiswahili, you will understand that those powers are there. What has been the problem is failure by cabinet secretaries responding to summons wherever issued by the Senate. And Senator Cheruiyot, our majority leader, will tell you that in the last session, we issued several invitations, several summons to CSS, but they never appeared before the floor of this House. That's why I was informing the Honorable Senator of Kericho, majority leader, that what he should be telling, please, I'm informing the member. Now, Mr. Speaker, in good faith and with good intentions, I wanted Senator Cheruiyot, leader of majority, to whisper to His Excellency the President to preach good manners to his CSS, so that when we summon them, they respond and appear. The Constitution is very clear. Article 125 is very clear. We sit as a high court. We have power to summon. That's adequate. We don't need to be lectured that we need to amend our standing orders, Mr. Speaker. The Constitution is adequate. I want to hope that the CSS that are coming in, the 22 men and women, will respect the Senate and that they will respond wherever required to respond to any query by this House. So, Honorable Kalwale.
Thank you, Senator.
Honorable Kalwale.
Kongo Mugeni.
Honorable Kalwale.
Before you resume, I want to guide this House in this manner.
There's one point, Mr. Speaker. You know, Mr. Speaker, the member is breaching our standing orders by imputing wrong motive that as a senior counsel have misread Article 153 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, I've not added a comma nor a full stop to the provisions of Article 153.3. I've read it the way it is, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, the member is out of order for imputing wrong motive on my person, Mr. Speaker. He should apologize.
I want to give guidance to this House as follows. If you want to have a point of order executed, don't shout this point of order. Press the intervention key and keep quiet. I have now 7 honorable senators who want to speak on this issue, who want to contribute on this issue, but most of them are not even talking. So I want to guide you that if you just raise your hand, you shout, you stand up, I will not be able to catch your eye. I will only be looking at the intervention key so that we can have order in this House. I want to give 2 more senators this point of order. I will start with the number 1 on this list, Senator for Homa Bay County, Kajwang Moses Otieno. And thank you, you did not even bother to shout or Yeah, that is the way I want us to move.
Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage the House that we don't have to fight on every matter. I know the first two sittings of this House have been a bit tumultuous, but there are some things which we must take a common position as a House. Mr. Speaker, I refer to Standing Order number 181 that talks about the Committee of the Whole to anchor my point of order. I also bring my experience. In the last Parliament, or in the last Senate, I'm perhaps the only senator who was fortunate to chair two committees, Public Accounts Committee and the Devolution Committee. And Mr. Speaker, the impunity that was there in the executive, as a chair of a committee, you could never get the ministers or the cabinet secretaries to appear before committees. And that impunity was further entrenched by the leadership of the House that shielded the cabinet secretaries. Mr. Speaker, you would find people going on retreat between the Matiang'i-led NDIC, I think it was called NDIC, and the leadership of the Senate, and they would agree in hotels. You'd find a situation where a committee has summoned a cabinet secretary, and the cabinet secretary goes to the Speaker's office to negotiate whether they should appear or they should not. Mr. Speaker, this matter, as raised by Senator Omogeni, is so clear in the Constitution, and you know, the matter raised by Senator for Kakamega, when that mess is lowered, we can go into committee of the whole, and a member of the executive can come to this House and can be grilled and can be put to task. The only thing we cannot do without a constitutional amendment is to bring members of the executive in this House when that mess is on the table. Mr. Speaker, that requires a constitutional amendment. But what the president wants to achieve is achievable if he talks to his CSs to desist from impunity. And what encourages me, Mr. Speaker, Kipchumba Murkomen, as sat in this House, will be a cabinet secretary. I don't expect we'll have to drag him. Soipan Tuya, Kindiki Kithure, Mithika Linturi. I think we might be having one of the best executive teams. So, Mr. Speaker, on this matter, we don't even have to be majority and minority. The provisions are there. What we need to deal with is the impunity that we saw in the last.
The Senator for Kiambu County, Karungo Lango.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to weigh in on the point of orders that have been raised. And I totally agree with Senator Omogeni and Senator Kajwang. It is true, the previous executive was full of impunity. And I want to assure them, we took them home. That executive that never honored the Senate, none of them is in those positions. So they should rest assured that we have a different government, we have a different executive, and actually it is the same executive that is proposing that the CSs to be coming to this House. So it's up to us. If we want them to come to the Senate, we know what to do. If we do not want them to come, it's okay. But the president himself said he is willing, and he has instructed his appointees that whenever they're called to this House, they should appear here without fail. So I'm worried to see the same opposition that was supporting the same government or the executive, they are now crying for, saying that they you honored this house. Yeah, they wanted them to come back here. But at least we clean the house, we clean the country, we clean the government. Thank you.
Thank you, Majority Leader, and I beg the House that let the Majority Leader move this motion to the end uninterrupted so that we get the second and then we open this motion for debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll try and make progress. You know, Senator Omogeni has sent me to the President, but before I deliver his message, I must first get an undertaking from him that he will read paragraph 16 of the President's speech, because if he did that, then he will not need to send me to the President. The President gave his commitment on the last matter that on this matter of oversight and holding government accountable. My administration commits to restore the place of Parliament in our democracy by respecting the autonomy and oversight authority of Parliament on the executive. If that is done, Mr. Speaker, then we don't need to have the kind of debate that we're having. So I appreciate that he needs to read and understand that particular. Mr. Speaker, another very important issue highlighted in this particular speech, just alongside the theme of independent institution, Mr. Speaker, is a place of the judiciary. And you remember, Mr. Speaker, the President reported to the House that his first act, you know, there is significance in a first act, Mr. Speaker. When you undertake a first act, when you get to an office, when you have an opportunity to be somewhere, the first thing that you do is quite remarkable, both in African culture and in general practice across the globe, Mr. Speaker. And you remember that the first act, public function, that the President undertook, which he reported to the House, was to appoint and swear in the 6 judges of a court of appeal that had been condemned by the previous administration for reasons that nobody ever knew. This was quite shameful because you have judges of the High Court who are presiding over courts, yet people were questioning their characters, because you remember, in typical fashion, as was a standard of practice in this country, Mr. Speaker, that people were being accused by the former occupant of the Office of the Director of Criminal Investigation in newspapers, including men and women of our judiciary. Unlike us, at least us as a politician, if Kinoti accused me, I'd have a public platform for which to respond. When you accuse members of a judiciary, they have no other avenue. And it was a very trying time for these 6 particular judges that on many occasions, Mr. Speaker, many people questioned what was the basis upon which the President had rejected their elevation to the Court of Appeal. He swore them in and reported to the House that he had already done it, and that is how he intends to operate, that we ensure that as a constitutional democracy, we respect the sovereign doctrine of separation of powers, that we ensure that the judiciary has its place. If you read the next paragraph of his speech, commits even additional funding. It's a shame, Mr. Speaker, that the National Assembly in the last few years, Mr. Speaker, has grown the budget of almost all key public institutions, from Parliament itself to the executive, yet the judiciary continues to receive a paltry 14 to 18 billion Kenya shillings. The President has made a commitment that in each of the next 5 years, progressively, the judiciary shall get an additional at least 3 billion Kenya shillings, Mr. Speaker, together with activation of the judiciary fund that will ensure that Kenyans have access to justice. We are able to build at least a high court in each of our 47 counties, and citizens can access justice without much interest, Mr. Speaker. That is something very important and for which I am proud to report about. Of course, he moved on to agriculture, Mr. Speaker, which is on many occasions we've been reminded that this is the backbone of our economy. But unfortunately, we don't treat it as so. Mr. Speaker, so long as we continue to rely on rain-fed agriculture, by the bulk, 80 to 90% of our farmers, if we don't incentivize them and ensure that they're able to access markets, that they're able to access farm inputs at a cheaper price, Mr. Speaker, then we shall never be food secure as a country, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the commitment that has been given by the President in his speech, that part of the first acts as well that he has done, and he reports in this speech, Mr. Speaker, is to bring down the cost of fertilizer from 6,500 to 3,500 for a 50 kg bag. I want to challenge our colleagues, Mr. Speaker. Those of you that will have the opportunity to work in the Agriculture Committee, please hold the executive to the account. Ensure that this cheap subsidized fertilizer is available across the country. In fact, push the Ministry of Agriculture, because agriculture is largely a devolved function. There is absolutely no reason why the national government shouldn't partner with our county governments to ensure that there is proper distribution, so that we don't have cartels at the ministry. You know, where people, if you know somebody who knows another person, you're able to pay them and you access this cheap fertilizer, store it in your hardware and sell it to farmers. That has been the story of our subsidy programs as a country, Mr. Speaker. I believe that, colleagues, those of you that will serve at the Agriculture Committee, please push the Ministry of Agriculture to partner with our county government so that our farmers can access the right fertilizer at the right amount at the right time, so that they are able to produce cheaply. And of course, push county governments as well
to work together with the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Cooperatives, because we need to ensure, Mr. Speaker, that our farmers get value for their practice. Because the two main challenges for those of us that had the opportunity to move around and listen to our farmers during the campaigns. Of course, they cried about the cost of farm inputs, and second, immediately after that, is markets. Markets for their goods, Mr. Speaker, where they are able to sell at a good price without feeling that they are being exploited. A good aggregator for all our products, Mr. Speaker, will enable our farmers enjoy the fruits of their labor. Otherwise, as is the practice right now, if we allow it to move as is without the kind of the policies that are being proposed in this particular speech, Mr. Speaker, you will continue with the trend where the ordinary farmer is not the beneficiary of their practice. We must have a discussion as a country, Mr. Speaker, about value addition. We cannot continue to be, for example, in the tea sector, and there are 14 of you in this House, senators, that are representative of tea farmers. We cannot continue to be the world's leading producer of the best black tea, yet we are only bulk selling. We must have a discussion about value addition so that in the next 5 years, we are value adding our tea in excess of 50%. Right now, we are doing only 5% of that. Our farmers will never enjoy the fruit of their labor, so long as we are just plucking, shredding it in factories, packing it in containers and selling it off in the Mombasa auction. You must be able to have a ready market for value-added tea, the final product, fetching for upwards of $5, you know, a kg, as opposed to what is being sold right now at a shilling or two, a dollar or two, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, those are the policies that are being produced in this particular speech, Mr. Speaker. I thought I had additional time, but maybe, did I exhaust? I think you did not hold my time, actually. I can seek leave of you to conclude in the next 3 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, Mr. Speaker. 3, okay, yeah, because I know many of my colleagues want to speak. I'll conclude my speaker by saying this is a good speech. 2 or 3 things that I want to highlight. Affordable credit, something that was mentioned broadly by Kenyans. You know how much each of you right now, if you are to call your domestic workers back in the village and say, I want to send you to a particular shop, can I send you money? The first thing they'll tell you, please don't send it on this particular line. That one has a Fuliza, or this one has an Mshwari, and the likes of things. Affordable credit is a big challenge to the ordinary citizens of this country. I want to be happy that he reported on this speech, and I saw it, Mr. Speaker, that at least one of the most popular avenues for mobile borrowing, that is Fuliza, Mr. Speaker, has reduced their rates by 40%. That is not enough. I still find the charges that they are pushing to be a bit extremely high, Mr. Speaker. And I look forward to our colleagues in the Finance Committee demanding of them that let it be as competitive as what is offered in other jurisdictions, Mr. Speaker. Finally, is the issue of health that I want to conclude on. Mr. Speaker, the President dwelt a lot on his plan on universal health care. We've had this discussion. If there is something for which this Senate must stand to be counted, Mr. Speaker, and colleagues who have been here before know the journey that we have walked in trying to push UHC. You remember the phase that was launched, the trial phase that was launched in 4 counties last time, Mr. Speaker. With so much challenges, county governments reporting very little progress in terms of penetration and access to affordable health care. Then this House of the Senate must hold the executive and partner with it, pass the necessary legislation for reforms in the NHIF, pass additional resources to our county governments in terms of user foregone fees, so that we ensure ordinary citizens are able to access primary health care at a fee that is affordable to the ordinary citizen. That is properly exposed. I look forward to colleagues who will be nominated to serve in the Health Committee, partnering with the executive, because as we oversight them, we are also partners with them. If there are legislative interventions that they want from us, let us be done with it as quick as possible, so that all the 47 to 50 million Kenyans that live in this country are able to access healthcare cheaply and at the right time, get the right intervention, and nobody has to sell off their land, sell off their property because they have had the unfortunate occurrence of being sick, Mr. Speaker. That is the kind of country that I look forward to living in, and I challenge our colleagues. Of course, I'm sure as the rest of my colleagues continue to speak and raise issues, they'll speak about many things, including KRA, the kind of reforms that are needed, which were exposed by the President. So, Mr. Speaker, that is the speech of the President. I beg to move, Mr. Speaker, and request my colleague, Senator Boni Halwale, the Senator for Kakamega, to second. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Majority Whip, Senator Boni Karware.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to second the motion that the speech of His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, which he delivered at the joint sitting of this House, be appreciated, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, before I do this, I think it is very important that I be understood by Kenyans who are following this debate on why I used very strong language on a state council during my point of order, Mr. Speaker. A senior council. Sorry, senior council. Senior council. Omugeni omukoyone. Omukoyone. Senior council. Mr. Speaker, because this is a house of record, I want it to be eternally clear that the President was very clear in his mind, and he has repeatedly said so, that unless we tweak the standing orders, we will not be able to extract maximum benefit from cabinet secretaries appearing before the House, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a problem we had in the second Senate, where Senator Madaya and I had the privilege to sit, because what goes on is actually a joke, whereby a chair of a committee purports to respond to issues raised either in the Senate or in the National Assembly on behalf of the executive. My brother, Senator Mukani, Senior Counsel, I agree with you that a committee of this House can quickly transform itself into a committee of the whole, and the minister will come. But please, let it be clearer further to you that when he does so, the mess of this parliament is lowered. Once you lower the mess of the Senate, Mr. Speaker, it means you have stepped down the authority of the House. Senator Mugeni. It therefore means if the Speaker, if the Cabinet Secretary is addressing this House with a lowered mess, the authority of this Senate is such that you can only push him that much on whatever it is that he has presented to the House. We would like Cabinet Secretaries, Mr. Speaker, to come to this House when the House is exercising full authority, so that we hold them responsible, Mr. Speaker, for all their utterances, including their commitments on what they will do. You can imagine, Senator Mugeni, if a member of the House, of the lower house,
Karwale, avoid
addressing the member.
Addressing Senator Mugeni.
Yes. Mr. Speaker, you can imagine in a sensitive issue.
Look at my eyes directly and yes.
Mr. Speaker,
yeah, I'm listening to you.
Your eyes are very harsh, so. Mr. Speaker, why this matter must be settled once and for all through what the President proposed is because, Mr. Speaker, on a critical issue like the House rising on a matter of grave national importance, people are dying, for example, in West Pokot. and the minister cannot be brought here so as to commit himself on the security measures that they are putting in place, then Parliament's authority goes down. We would like this to be taking place when the mess is in place. I thought I should make that one clear, and my brother, Senator Mugeni, next time I come to you to represent me in court, I go to him to represent me in court, he should not have second thoughts. I was not casting a passion at him, but I was worried that he is misreading the Constitution, and I want him to read it properly, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, having said that, and being clearer, I want to use this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to thank Kenyans who turned out in large numbers to give us the result that gave us the fifth president of the Republic of Kenya.
Senator Majority Whip Boni Karwari, I think and guidance house that we move the motion second and then we can contribute. But the way you are moving, you are attracting so many
points of order.
So can you really restrict yourself to seconding the motion so that we make progress?
I'm so guided, Mr. Speaker.
Please.
Mr. Speaker.
Are you satisfied, Honorable Senator Buru Ondinga?
Yes, Honorable Speaker, I would just like to, I'm rising on a point of order on the issue which is being introduced by Honorable Kalwale, my very, very good friend, whom I respect, on the issue of the cabinet secretaries coming to address the House. Mr. Speaker, sir, is Honorable Kalwale introducing the BBI through the back door, which proposed amendment to the Constitution so that cabinet secretaries can be coming to address this House directly? Was His Excellency agreeing with us that we should amend the Constitution so that cabinet secretaries can come and address us directly?
Mr. Speaker, certainly I cannot attempt to introduce the BBI on the floor of this House for the reason that the Supreme Court of Kenya made a serious pronouncement which guided the entire country. And amongst other things, the Supreme Court, Mr. Speaker, said that BBI was a mongrel that was null and void. I would not want to be the mother who brought us back to a mongrel called BBI. Mr. Speaker, sir.
What is out of order, Senator Moses Kajwang?
Mr. Speaker, I wanted to bring the attention of the House and Senator Boni Khalwale to Standing Order number 185 that talks about general application of rules in Committee of the Whole. And Mr. Speaker, that Standing Order says the same rules of order and of debate for conduct of business shall be observed in Committee of the Whole as in the Senate. Mr. Speaker, is Senator Khalwale in order to mislead or to misdirect the House that the Committee of the Whole is inferior simply because the mess is lowered? Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, if you look at Article 255 of the Constitution, amendment of the Constitution, a proposed amendment shall be by referendum if it touches on a few things, part of which is on the principle of separation of powers. And that principle of separation of powers makes a distinction between the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. The point at which the executive then wants to come to this House to perform roles that are legislative in nature, that will call for an amendment to the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, I'm raising this point of order not to spur debate, but just to guide us in our thinking, because I believe that this is not a matter that we should contest, but it is a matter that we should think deeply about how we can achieve it under the current laws, and if we want to go the extreme, how we can then achieve it through a constitutional amendment, which perhaps will not be BBI, which could be that constitutional amendment that we need to declare the Senate to be the upper house and to strengthen the Senate.
Honourable member, senators, I think we can preserve our comments now to the debate. When you'll be contributing, you can make your comments about the amending the constitution, introducing BBI, bringing other Mongrel, what you mentioned about Mongrel. So proceed and please expedite your seconding so that we can move on.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with Senator Kajwang. Senator Kajwang, you are perfectly right. When I was disagreeing with the Senator of Siaya, the distinguished Senator of Siaya, I was disagreeing with him on the mongrel called BBI. But if there is need for us, Mr. Speaker, to relook at the Constitution, which many people agree, including the report of the Auditor General that was ordered by the President, an audit of which was concluded, the Auditor General consulted the institutions of government, he consulted the public, there was public participation, and there was a recommendation on what needed to be done. If a proper thing, pedigree, like that one is introduced, we would be part of it. We are against the mongrel. But the pedigree, hallelujah. Mr. Speaker, I was raising the issue of the President's congratulating us who are elected and thanking members of the public for participating in the election. I want also to use this opportunity to thank the people of Kakamega for voting for me overwhelmingly. Mr. Speaker, I had no idea during the campaign that the Orange Democratic Movement had become so powerful in Kakamega. Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate the Orange Democratic Movement for the effort and the show that they put up in Kakamega. But being the gentlemen they are, I hope, they'll also find time to congratulate me for giving them the scare that I did up to and including winning the position of senator overwhelmingly, and also helping the President to get the kind of support he got in Kakamega that was unprecedented for the last two elections of 2013 and 2017. Mr. Speaker, having said this, congratulating the voters and the candidates, I want also to congratulate the REF, the Electoral Commission of Kenya, the Independent Boundaries and the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC. They did a sterling job. And at the risk of me inviting points of order, I want to use this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to celebrate Wafula Wanyonyi Chebukati, the chairman of IEBC. For 3 days, that one man held our country together. And it was a shame that some members of this august house took it upon themselves, Mr. Speaker, to conduct themselves in Bomas that afternoon in very unacceptable manner, an unhelpful manner, unlawful manner. Today, as I sit here, just like I have always wondered why big people commit serious crimes and no action is taken, today I sit here and I say, while I was alive, it is on record, and in my book, my own autobiography is on record, that big people in this country are above the law. Mr. Speaker, that an elected member would do what I saw a senator doing in Bomas that afternoon, and up to this day, he has never been arrested, he has never been arraigned in court. It's a shame to our criminal. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you challenge me, then I will respond, you know. Mr. Speaker, This is not the first time that we are allowing politicians to get away with serious offenses. There was that one of Bomas. We all saw it. It was unfortunate. And before that, there was another one where another politician actually swore himself in as a president. We must bring this to an end so that no one again can ever swear himself in as a president. No one can ever attack an IEBC official when the IEBC official is discharging their constitutional mandate.
What is out of order, Senator Ososi? Gone free.
Mr. Speaker, Honorable Khalwale is my neighbor and a good friend. I'm concerned Honorable Khalwale seems to be discussing a senator whom is not mentioning the name. And there is no substantive motion to discuss a member. Is Honorable Khalwale in order?
Honorable Senator Boni Khalwale.
Mr. Speaker, sir, unless the Honorable Distinguished Senator of Vihiga is suffering from an ailment of daydreaming when his eyes are wide open. Mr. Speaker, I have not stated a member of the name of any member, neither of this House or the other House. Mr. Speaker, the word senator could mean I was referring to Senator Aaron Cheruiyot, or I was referring to Senator Osotsi, or referring to Senator Ledama. It could be any one of those people. So why are you forcing me, Mr. Speaker? So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to laud the President for the concern that he has about agriculture. Agriculture is the single largest sector that employs our hustlers. And therefore, if indeed our bottom-up agenda is going to affect our people positively, then agriculture is the first line of intervention, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Deputy President for the proposals he made, but I want to call upon this House, the Senate, and also the National Assembly.
Honorable Senator Boni Khalwale, I thought the motion is about the presidential debate, the president's debate, not the deputy president.
The president, sir. Okay. Thank you, Mr. I was thinking of Kashagwa, the deputy president. That is why I had a slip of the tongue. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to invite this Senate and the other House, the National Assembly, to help President William Ruto's government by doing more. We need to be courageous as legislators. We speak to the land tenure policy in this country. For as long as we continue subdividing ancestral land into little and tinier pieces so that every brother has got his own piece, we will not achieve food security. It's important that we have a clear policy on land tenure so that, Mr. Speaker, we can encourage urbanization and possibly achieve land consolidation so that we can have large-scale production of food. Mr. Speaker, this being the case, this is now the modern era where science is guiding the whole world. I would like to appeal to colleagues that it is time for us also to encourage the firm introduction of genetically modified foodstuffs so that we can have food security in this country. Mr. Speaker, the President raised the important issue of the Shylocks and the need for us to strengthen our small, medium enterprises, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, He chose to refer to the prohibitive lending fees that borrowers are exposed to, and with special reference, in this case, using my own words, Safaricom. Members of this Senate, we must fight hard. What is going on that monopoly called Safaricom is not acceptable. Safaricom declares obnoxious profits at the end of each financial year. Mr. Speaker, that my daughter, who has her boyfriend, can call the boyfriend and tell her, Mirembe mno, and then she pays for greeting her boyfriend, her lover, it does not make sense. We need to make the cost of calling cheaper. We are now doing most of the learning in this country, Mr. Speaker, virtually online. Mr. Speaker.
Senator Boni Karol, you know, once you use that local language, you must interpret what you have just said, because I'm lost. Didn't you insult the speaker? Didn't you insult the other members? You mention, or you speak that language, and then you explain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. By saying Mirembe mno, I was merely saying that she's telling the boyfriend, may peace be with you, my lover. And Mr. Speaker, why I didn't find it necessary to expound is because that language I'm speaking is spoken by 7 million people. And under the Constitution, a language that has got that kind of, that you don't have to explain. It is expected that people from communities with smaller languages, you learn to speak the language of the bigger communities. I mean, it's because you have to hear them. You're supposed to do business with them. Most of us strain to hear certain languages because we need to do business with those people. It is not an offense, Mr. Speaker. It is not unconstitutional for somebody to speak mother tongue, but not in this House, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was making this point that we need to encourage the President to talk more with these people so that these profits they make, that is not business. That is criminal. It is actually profiteering. They are engaged in profiteering. They are not doing business. Mr. Speaker, the President spoke to the issue of the Hustlers Fund. The Hustlers Fund, if we are not careful, if, Mr. Speaker, we roll out the National Hustlers Fund before doing the proper legislation, we will run the risk, Mr. Speaker, of the fund being either a failure or being abused, the way the Uwezo Fund, the Youth Fund, and so on have failed, because members of the public will say, this is government money. They collect it, they don't want
SMEs, the micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. And I will talk about the CRB, where he proposed the ranking. Instead of blacklisting people and getting them out of the lending system, he proposed the international best practice of a scoring system, whereby the defaulters are given the lowest score, and the ones that are servicing the loans are given a higher score, so that the lenders can classify their clients according to their profiles. And according to the MD of Metropole, which is one of the 3 CRB companies, 19%, which amounts to 4.6 defaulters that are listed in CRB, owe less than 1,000 Kenya shillings. And so you see, this is a bulk of the hustler nation, so to speak, that has been locked out of the lending system. Another proposal that the president came up with is the Hustler Fund that he went around the country promising the same people who are engaged in small, micro, and medium enterprise. And he's committed to provide 50 billion Kenya shillings towards this end. And this is going to open the trade space, because the biggest challenge for this group of businesses is due to their informality. They do not qualify for formal financing. And as the self-imposed youth president, I would like to recommend that in this fund, we give a chunk, maybe 50% to the young people and a good percentage for innovation, so that our young people are kept busy. And being the most energetic, and we are Kenya experiencing a youth bulge, we have great resource in our young people. So that is just a proposal that this fund goes to help the youth and goes to help innovation. And in the culture of saving, I would like to laud the president, because he made that bold suggestion that we move from saving 200 shillings a month, and I quote him, he said, no return rate in the world can turn that into a meaningful retirement scheme. It cannot amount to anything. So we need to support him through legislation. I know it has been attempted before, and it was challenged in court. We need to support him, both houses, so that these proposals that need a bipartisan, support from both divides, ourselves and the minority side, the government side and the minority side, we both come together and support the president in his proposals for the hustler reprieve. I don't expect politics to come to play during these very crucial proposals that are going to change our country and are going to change our economy in a big way. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, allow me to liken our president, His Excellency, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, to the former Prime Minister of Singapore, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, a respected leader who was considered the father of, he's the guy who changed the economy of that country. Because, are you saying something? Allow me to liken him to that
Senator
leader.
Karen, don't bother with the people talking. Sorry, senators speaking to you on the other sides. You proceed, execute
Yeah,
your
Mr. Lee saw
issues.
Singapore change and transform economically in a big way. And I call upon this House to leave politics aside and let's support the President in his proposals. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Senator for Nyamira County, Congo Mugeni, Senior Counsel.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me an opportunity to also make my contribution to the speech that His Excellency the President made to Parliament. And Mr. Speaker, we first of all appreciate the fact that this was a closely contested election, and that as Azimio we were able to have more than 7 million Kenyans behind us. So we also want to appreciate the fact that since we abide by the Constitution, we said we don't agree with the decision of the Supreme Court, but we respect it. So now what we need to do is to really put His Excellency the President on toes so that he can deliver on the promises that they made to the people of Kenya. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, sir, I had an assertion from the Leader of Majority, Senator Cheruiyot, Senator for Kericho, that this Senate will have a very close working relationship and goodwill from President William Ruto. And I hope, Mr. Speaker, that the President will invoke the provisions of our standing orders that give him a leeway to come and address the Senate, not Parliament, to come and address the Senate as a house. So I hope that during his tenure, he will take advantage of that standing order and come and address the House. It's good to come and have lunch within Parliament, but we wish him to appear before us so that he addresses issues that are of concern to the Senate. Mr. Speaker, I have read the speech of His Excellency the President. How I wish, Mr. Speaker, that the actions of the President can match the contents of his speech. Mr. Speaker, the President tells us that we should not give a lot of grounding to ethnic mobilization, ethnic rewards in our politics. But Mr. Speaker, having gone through the names of the cabinet secretaries, the 22 of them, Mr. Speaker, I'm surprised, Mr. Speaker, that there are a number of small ethnic minorities in this country that since independence have never had an opportunity of having a CS appointed from those ethnic minorities. Mr. Speaker, I'm talking about ethnic minorities like the Kurias. Mr. Speaker, in the entire of the 6 counties of the former Nyanza province, Mr. Speaker, the Kuria sub-tribe has consistently supported the political party under which the DP has either, the current president has either run for office as a running mate of His Excellency, retired President Uhuru Kenyatta, or under UDA. The 2 members of parliament for Kuria East, Kuria West, Mr. Speaker, did not get an opportunity to get a CS appointed from that sub-tribe. The Turkana, Mr. Speaker, and we saw the efforts, the time, the investment that Governor Nanok gave to His Excellency the President. There is no cabinet CS from the Turkana sub-tribe. The Taitas, Mr. Speaker, the Teso, Mr. Speaker. But when you go to, Mr. Speaker, to Central, and I have nothing against my brothers from Central, Kikuyus. I have nothing against them. Deputy Majority Leader, I have nothing against the Kikuyus. But if His Excellency the President is telling us, Mr. Speaker, that we should not place a lot of premium on one ethnic group, Mr. Speaker, why should we have one ethnic group, Mr. Speaker, producing Deputy President and 7 cabinet secretaries, Mr. Speaker, to the exclusion of these other minorities, Mr. Speaker? Even where I come from, Mr. Speaker, in Nyamira, Mr. Speaker, if you look at the votes that the Deputy President got from Nyamira and from Kisi, without those votes, Mr. Speaker, he could not have attained 50+1, Mr. Speaker. But in Nyamira, I have not gotten anything, Mr. Speaker. If you removed one cabinet secretary from the Kikuyu community, Mr. Speaker, and you reward the people of Nyamira, Mr. Speaker, then I'll be saying His Excellency the President is walking the talk of his speech, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, let us, as we were reminded by the President, let us be honest and truthful to him and tell him, Mr. Speaker, that the best way to change this culture of placing a lot of premium on particular ethnic groups is by picking a cabinet that is representative of the 42
Senator Mweni,
ethnic
let's hear this
groups.
point of order from the Senator for Muranga. Gugi, Senator Gugi.
Point of order. Following what the Senator of Nyamira has just presented before the House, is the Senator for Nyamira in order to preach tribalism at the altar of, and clanism at the altar of qualification? I think I also want to bring it to his attention that the Kikuyus that he is talking about represent about over 30% of the population of this country. I also want to remind him that the President, His Excellency the President, could only appoint 23 cabinet secretaries. We have 43, so to speak, communities in Kenya. And he has mentioned the Turkana community. In the last, I'm on a point of order, Senator Mugeni. In the last, in the outgoing government, I think we had Minister Munyes from Turkana. And so even if it was going to be done in a rotational order, then you cannot stand and say and talk about and say that the Turkana have been excluded. We had C.S. Matiang'i, who comes from Kisi, that neighbors Nyamira. The senator should not mislead this House that actually the President, this cabinet, and everybody has seen it, this cabinet is the most evenly distributed in this country ever. And so I think, Mr. Speaker, we should not allow the Senator for Nyamira to continue misleading this House that even distribution was not done in the whole country in the appointment of this cabinet. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Okongo Mwen, just a minute. There has been 2 points of order here, interventions from Senator Lobahali Ibrahim, Senator Abdulrahman Abdullahi Milaj. I don't know whether they have point of orders or they want to contribute. Maybe they can place the right button to contribute so that we can really move forward. Point of order, contribute? Yes, maybe press the other button. Senator Baz Sheikh Mohammed, do you have a point of order? Yes, proceed.
Our respected senior counsel is a well-known person. But today, the way he's talking like somebody coming from Nyamira village. It's very unfortunate that he has, clients across the board, across the country. And as a senior senator, Mr. Speaker, sir, I request the senior senator to withdraw that statement. Thank you.
Proceed, Senator Mwen. Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, with tremendous respect to Senator from Murang'a Nyutu and Senator Abbas, maybe we need another induction so that members understand what are standing orders. So I don't see any standing order, and I'm sure, Mr. Speaker, you will agree with me, so I'll ignore and proceed. Mr. Speaker, I'm reading what is in paragraph 10 of His Excellency President William Ruto's speech. He says, we have to dislodge ethnicity as the central organizing principle of our politics. And he says we need to do away with the politics of exclusion, politics of discrimination, politics of tribalism. And the point I'm making this afternoon on the floor of this House, Mr. Speaker, is that I'm looking to a time when we shall have a president who will pick cabinet secretaries from at least half of the 42 ethnic groups in this country, so that we walk the talk of saying we want to dislodge ethnicity as the central organizing principle of our politics. That's the point I'm making, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we want our children to also grow knowing that even if they were born in Nyamira, we may be as a minority with 1 million votes, Mr. Speaker, but they have a right also to get an opportunity to serve in cabinet, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on Sunday, I believe, I was watching television, Mr. Speaker, and I saw the senator for Tana River, who comes from one of the most marginalized areas. He was protesting, Mr. Speaker, and asking, of the 22, at least one should have come from Tana River, Mr. Speaker. And I support Senator Mungatana. That exclusion is not right, Mr. Speaker. That exclusion is not right, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker,
Senator Chelagay Samson.
Mr. Speaker.
What is out of order again, you know?
Mr.
Because
Speaker,
members, I think you should wait for your time to contribute.
No, I'm rising on a point of order, Mr. Speaker, as per Standing Order 96, raising on the issue that the senior counsel who succeeded me in the JLAC is misleading the nation. If it comes to appointments, Article 10 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, on national values and principles of good governance, sets out on how appointments should be done. Casting aspersions to individuals that have been appointed as cabinet nominees is misleading the nation. The guiding principle. No, Mr. Speaker, let me build. You know, senior counsel, I didn't know you can be a heckler. I used to know you can keep quiet and listen. You are joining the Secretary General Edwin Sifuna in heckling. You should not stop heckling. Can you listen? Can you listen? You will speak. Can you listen, Mr. Speaker, protect me?
Let us, you know, I'm trying to get a point of order.
Correct.
So please let us give him time.
You know, heckling is their profession, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the point I'm raising, it is out of order to profile individuals and Kenyans that have been nominated based. And talking about minorities and majority, this has been captured. And the cabinet, Mr. Speaker, and the cabinet is yet to be complete. There are PSS to be appointed, there are CSS to be appointed, and government is an entity. Government, Mr. Speaker, is not a cabinet. And therefore, when you look at these national values and principles of good governance, Mr. Speaker, there is a guiding principle for the president to be guided by the Constitution, not to be guided by comments of Senator of Nyamira. Mr. Speaker, I should be grateful that one of his tribesmen, Mheshimiwa Machogu, is the nominee of education, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, he is out of order to try and profile Kenyans. And if he has an issue, he must bring a substantive motion to discuss those individuals as per the standing orders. Mr. Speaker, I thought I did a good handing over when he succeeded me as the chair JLAC, but I can see him in camera and maybe still guide him around. I know he's my senior-in-law, but other things he needs to be guided upon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Kindly conclude, Senator Mugen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm happy that you have, by your ruling, you have made the conclusion that there is no substantive point of order that was raised by my friend Cheragay, Senator Cheragay. So, Mr. Speaker, not to belabor that point, Mr. Speaker, let us build a country that values all the 42 ethnic groups, Mr. Speaker. That's the only time we'll be able to walk the talk when we say that we want to give equal opportunities to all Kenyans. So I'm urging His Excellency the President, because he has still time, let him go back and reconsider the issues that have been raised by people like Senator of Tana River, Senator Mugatana, and have a cabinet that represents all the 42 minorities of this country. That's the only time, Mr. Speaker, we will all have a sense of belonging and a sense of acceptance as Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, the next point I wanted to speak, Mr. Speaker, is when we say, Mr. Speaker, when we say that we want to respect the independence of the judiciary, Mr. Speaker, let that include the culture of us respecting decisions emanating from our courts of law. Mr. Speaker, not one, not twice, the High Court has ruled that the position of cabinet administrative secretaries is illegal, is unconstitutional, and it has no space in our Constitution. Mr. Speaker, we know that if you read the Constitution from Article 152 all through to 155, Mr. Speaker, we know the positions that create the cabinet. 152, Mr. Speaker, as the President, as the Deputy President, as the Attorney General, as ministers that are available for appointment by the minister. 154, as Secretary to the Cabinet. And more importantly, Mr. Speaker, 155 says that there will be principal secretaries who will be the administrators of these ministries. So, Mr. Speaker, this thing we hear called cabinet administrative secretaries has no space in our Constitution, Mr. Speaker. So if the President has told us in his speech that he wants to respect the independence of the judiciary and respect the decisions coming from the judiciary, Mr. Speaker, let us have a president who will exercise his powers as permitted within the confines of our Constitution.
Mr. Mgeni, do you wish to be informed by Senator Cheragay?
Is a point of information? You know, Mr. Speaker, Senator Cheragay is my junior, so I like hearing what he says so that he can keep learning. One day we'll also rise to become a senior counsel. But I want my time to be muted so that it doesn't eat into my time. Okay? And you'll be a good student.
You know, Senator Omugeni is my good friend. On a point of information, I wanted, and this is in public domain, the Public Service Commission has put out an advert to get the public opinion on the creation of Chief Administrative Secretary. So at this time, I just wanted to inform my learned senior that the process of regularizing within the law has started. The Chief Administrative Secretary will be a process through Public Service Commission. Kenyans will have opportunity. So I want to urge my brother, if they have reservations, they can relay with Public Service Commission. But I want to assure him the President of the Republic of Kenya, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, is committed to the rule of law and the Constitution. I thank you, my brother.
Okay. Senator Mugeni, maybe
Mr. Speaker, I wanted to give Cheragay an opportunity because, as I said, he keeps learning. Mr. Speaker, I want to take Senator Cheragay to the provisions of Article 234 of the Constitution. Because, Mr. Speaker, when I rise to say something, I've read the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, the powers, I read the advert that was placed on the newspapers by Public Service Commission. The position that is being created are officers within the public service, not officers who can serve within the cabinet. So you must draw a distinction. They can create directors and all that, but you cannot create position of cabinet administrative secretary. Because if you read through Article 152, 153, 154, it has got no room. Mr. Speaker, this idea of going out of the way, trying to rewrite our constitution to reward political failures is a very bad culture, Mr. Speaker. If you have gone to the people, you have vied for political office, you have been rejected, wait for another 5 years, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, if the president wants to respect our judiciary, let him accept the reality that there is no space for appointment of cabinet as administrative secretaries, and that is the constitution as it is today, and we need to respect it. Mr. Speaker, the other point I wanted to talk about is this idea of agriculture. Mr. Speaker, let's not be in a hurry, and in the process we kill Kenyans. In 2012, Mr. Speaker, a scientific report said that GMOs can cause cancer, Mr. Speaker. Now, in the name of saying you want to create food security, Mr. Speaker, we are allowing entrepreneurs. We are not promoting hustlers, as you told us. You are now allowing entrepreneurs from outside the borders of this country, Mr. Speaker, to come and poison our people, Mr. Speaker, with GMOs. Mr. Speaker, GMOs cause cancer. Why is our president in a hurry? If the cabinet halted this thing in 2012, Mr. Speaker, when did we have another study?
Senator Mugeni, maybe you might be entering into dangerous grounds because I know your profession is legal.
No, Mr. Speaker.
If you,
I'm on.
Maybe,
Mr. Speaker, I'm on paragraph 21.
You know, this is a national house parliament. Therefore, we must be very careful the message that we are giving Kenyans.
Mr.
So
Speaker,
maybe if
Mr. Speaker, you know,
you must really make good reference on Senator Mugeni to that issue about how GMO causes cancer. Scientifically, if you prove to Kenyans who is out there who doesn't know what is a GMO, maybe even by the definition of GMO, so that now we can be able really to give the right information to Kenyans. So let us even not digress from the presidential address to the House.
Mr. Speaker, you know, Mr. Speaker, I respect the rules of this House.
Yes.
And I never rise before I've read fully.
Do you have some literature on GMO and how they can GMOs cause cancer?
Read paragraph 21 of His Excellency's speech.
No, I'm asking about how GMO can cause cancer. You can look for
page 21, Mr. Speaker. And you know, Mr. Speaker, when I speak about this, I'm passionate. Because,
no,
Mr.
my problem, when I'm presenting this House, Senator Mugeni, you know, I've given you a lot of latitude this afternoon. Because when I was in the other House, I really used to enjoy your debates. But now, when I'm presenting and then you make some references that might mislead Kenyans, that is my problem, my only problem. So maybe if you, Honorable Chalgay, the chair is, So I wanted to know whether maybe you have that reference. Maybe if not today, you can be able to put it tomorrow or the day after tomorrow about cancer. That's scientific evidence that GMO can cause cancer.
Mr. Speaker, maybe the best way to prosecute that issue is that I will reserve my comments on that matter till I bring a substantive debate on that issue
now,
before the floor.
Okay, proceed.
So, Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, Mr. Speaker, and I don't know why Senator Fernand Cheragay is not a good listener.
Mugen has defined any issue on GMO until it delivers to this House.
Yes.
Submits some evidence. Or now GMO can cause cancer.
Yeah, and Mr.
So
Speaker,
let's not go back there.
Yes. And Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, Mr. Speaker, His Excellency the President has talked about his pledge to the small traders, to the hawker, to the mama mboga, to the makanga. Mr. Speaker, we were told that the Hustler Nation will be a government formed by hawkers, hecklers, the mama mbogas, Mr. Speaker. And we were told, Mr. Speaker, that in the last government, BBI was about sharing positions. But, Mr. Speaker, I have not seen any mama mboga in the cabinet. I have not seen any hawker in the cabinet. Instead, Mr. Speaker, what I've seen is a sharing of positions, Mr. Speaker. So the president should not leave. The president, Mr. Speaker, is leaving behind the hawkers, the people who put him into office, Mr. Speaker. Instead, Mr. Speaker, of asking people who have already been elected to be in the cabinet, Mr. Speaker, these are the people the president should have brought on board, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue of food prices is still a problem, Mr. Speaker. You told us we'll lower the price of unga from 200 to 100. Mr. Speaker, I went to Ikonga market in my Nyamira county, Mr. Speaker. Unga is costing...
Your time is up. Senator... No, your time is up, Senator Mugeni, kindly. Let us give other members also time to contribute. No, next time I will. I'll be very magnanimous. Next time I sit here, I'll give you some more time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Then next is Tana River Senator Mungatana Danson, Buya.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to thank His Excellency, the President, for his exposition of public policy and where he needed us as the House. The desire of the people of Tana River and many of these other people from these arid and northern arid areas that, Mr. Speaker, this Marshall Plan be done as fast as possible. Mr. Speaker, what is a Marshall Plan? Marshall was the Secretary of State for President Harry Truman many years ago in the US. And Mr. Speaker, George Marshall came up with an economic plan to help the areas that had been ravaged by war in Europe after the end of the World War. And America had not been hit so much. So the essence of the plan was that there would be a transfer of resources from one area friendly to another area. Mr. Speaker, this is what I'm thinking, and this is what I hope our policymakers who are listening to this speech will help us implement. Mr. Speaker, in this country, there has been a deliberate economic segregation of some areas of this nation. Sessional papers have legitimized this economic segregation of areas such as ourselves. Mr. Speaker, we pray that the President, in dealing with this matter of the hunger, he will effect that Marshall Plan. It is our prayer and our hope that resources will be made available, not to just save lives on the short term, as has always been the case with previous administration. But, Mr. Speaker, resources will be made available to our counties to help in production so that hunger can be an issue of the past. Mr. Speaker, I plead with His Excellency the President and those policymakers around them. The time has come that we should do away with the mentality of those sessional papers that legitimized the separation, economic separation of people within this country. So, Speaker, I pray that this will be the end of that, and we are very hopeful that the President will actualize the plan to create a new deal like President Roosevelt did for those disadvantaged areas in the US. that our counties, which are not as productive, will be helped to fit and to come up in this idea of bottom-up, so that those counties that are at the bottom now, Mr. Speaker, will be brought up. We preached this language. Our people have understood it, and we are waiting for action from the very highest level. Mr. Speaker, I want to speak to the issue of the National Government Constituency Development Fund. Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful that His Excellency the President stated in the opening of the House that he will support efforts to constitutionalize this fund. As I'm speaking to you, Mr. Speaker, in Tana River County, and I'm sure in many other counties, so many students who are dependent on the CDF bursaries have been sent back homes by the head teachers and principals. Mr. Speaker, we cannot demonize these head of institutions. We cannot say they shouldn't send these children home, because what are they going to feed them on? Mr. Speaker, these funds were a reality, and I know for a fact that there is a member of parliament from our county who was elected solely because he managed that CDF very well as far as bursaries were concerned. Every parent was saying, we will elect him because our children are not paying school fees. Mr. Speaker, these children are back home. Mr. Speaker, the President, and I know he's listening, must do something to the millions of Kenyans, not just in Tana River, but the whole country who are back at home. We as legislators, even our governors, we don't have the resources to pay for each and every individual to send them back to school where they belong. We risk, Mr. Speaker, creation of a generation of people who are going to stay at home, and then they become despondent. They will go back to doing all the things we told them not to do. They will start engaging in activities that we as parents do not wish them to engage in. So, Mr. Speaker, I pray that on the floor of this House, as I plead with the government, that, Mr. Speaker, temporary measures will be made between the Treasury and the Ministry of Education, that funds will be transferred to these schools. Those funds that Mr. Ukuri Yatani, the CS for Education, for Treasury, told us he has not released them because he's waiting for an interpretation through the Attorney General of the opinion of the Supreme Court. We want, as that process is taking place, that intervening measures can be made, Mr. Speaker, that our children will not miss school. And I know that it is possible because this is a hustler's government. And they know what our people are going through now, Mr. Speaker. Something needs to be done as an interim measure. It is possible for government to work, government to government, the children to go back to school, even as the issues of the CDF are being resolved. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to speak on the issue of our democracy. The President spoke about the fact that our democracy was really maturing, that there was so much freedom that even the deputy president who is in government becomes a candidate of the opposition, and then he goes to win, and the sitting president becomes a leader of the other side. And he said in a very positive way, this is what we are talking about, democracy in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, I want to mention something connected with the democracy in this country. We must legislate to increase the space for participation rather than reduce the space for participation. And in this occasion, Mr. Speaker, there was a judgment that has gone into everybody in this country about the qualifications that are requisite for somebody to run for governor. Mr. Speaker, in my opinion, I think we should continue to legislate in such a way that we increase the space and we don't reduce the space. Governors, people who have become governors have left this house. This house, senators have gone on to become governors. And in this house, we don't need to have a degree. Mr. Speaker, we are not in any way belittling education. But let us increase the space. And in that same note, let us increase the space for political parties to participate. Mr. Speaker, it is wrong, and it is wrong, and it is wrong for big political parties to continue to reap from the treasury through the Office of Political Parties Registrar a lot of money that we are all paying, and yet the formula excludes all the small political parties. Mr. Speaker, we must legislate to increase the space. What am I saying? I'm saying if political parties present presidential candidates, they must be facilitated, whether they win or not. And if, Mr. Speaker, we are not going to get people being given facilitation because they are small, then let's all of us not have facilitation. Let the field be leveled. It is wrong for certain political parties to have billions they are owed by treasury, and others which are coming up having nothing. Mr. Speaker, when do we grow political parties? When do we grow political space? Let us legislate in this country to increase the space rather than to decrease the space for democracy to flourish in this country. Mr. Speaker, I beg to support. Thank you.
Next, we have nominated Senator Oyomo Beatrice.
Honorable Speaker, I also want to add my voice to the speech made by His Excellency the President. I want to start by saying that His Excellency the President made notice of the growing confidence in the contribution of women leadership in decision-making in our governance and the political institutions. He not only made reference to the growing number of women that were elected into parliament and gave numbers, although the numbers are still insignificant, Honorable Speaker. My contribution is to the fact that in leading this country and having taken cognizance of that fact, I would like the President to demonstrate that contribution of women in the coming appointments that he will be making. I'm happy that a number have been made, have made it to the nomination list of the CSS. I want to state that the Kenyan women are looking forward to getting more names of fellow women in the forthcoming appointments that he'll be making as he firms up his government. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, the President laid his mission to dramatically scale up productivity in agriculture, fisheries, and pastoralism for sustainable economic growth, for food security, and for economic incomes. Honorable Speaker, the mention of fisheries excites me because I come from the Lake Victoria region. According to the Executive Order number 1 of 2022, fisheries is listed under the State Department for Blue Economy in the Ministry of Mining, Blue Economy, and Maritime Affairs. Honorable Speaker, I want to state that there's all the reasons for retaining fisheries as a department rather than having it domiciled in other sectors. It is worth noting, Honorable Speaker, that fisheries of Lake Victoria accounts for such a high percentage in the total quantities and the total value of the national fish catches, respectively. And I want to make emphasize on some of the reasons why there is need, even if not from the Lake Victoria region, but for the country as a whole, to maintain fisheries as a department on its own. Fishing has a significant role in the provision of food security in this country, an area which His Excellency the President also mentions. And Honorable Speaker, removing fisheries as a distinct department, really the participation of this at the Lake Victoria Fisheries Organization, which is a regional organization, would be severely demeaned. Honorable Speaker, the Fisheries Department has been linked to other sister fisheries departments at the Lake Victoria Fisheries Organization, which is a regional fisheries management organization. Honorable Speaker, I want to emphasize once more that fisheries is a key contributor to the blue economy, and singling it out gives it the strength it deserves to attract investment and for collaborations of people who view the blue economy to be much of maritime and fishing. Honorable Speaker, to make it more clearer, fisheries is the common name for hustlers who understands what fish entails, and it sinks more with the masses in this country. Honorable Speaker, on the legislative agenda, His Excellency the President emphasized that his administration will rely on oversight to ensure the public get money for a value for money. And it is on the same note that while His Excellency was talking about the National Government Constituency Development Fund, NGCDF, and there was more emphasis also when it comes to the Senate on the setting up of the Senate Oversight Fund to be used to provide oversight on county funds. Your Excellency, I support this, the setting up of the Senate Oversight Fund, and I would like to say that whoever may be uncomfortable with this is somebody who is not keen on the growth of counties. Honorable Speaker, I support this.
Thank you, Senator Bittis. Senator Governor Lobahali Hibulaim.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I stand to contribute to the address by the President to the two Parliament. And I would like to reflect on a few paragraphs among the other issues that has been already reflected on. One is the issue on paragraph 16, where the President has discussed and invited this House or Parliament as a whole, invited Parliament and in fact challenged them to create facilitative amendments in the standing orders where necessary. Provisions of the Constitution notwithstanding, and as Senate, I would like us to consider that point in order to make sure rather than reflect what did not go right in the past, we should try and make right the opportunity that is provided by the President, His Excellency William Samoei Ruto. The other issue I'd like to reflect on is paragraph 41, where the President discussed on the issue of, managing the expenditure that is, blowing, where he discussed in paragraph 39, public borrowing, public debt to the tune of 900 billion. And in paragraph 41, where the President discussed his direction to National Treasury and various ministries on the reduction by combing through the numbers and getting 300 billion in this year's budget in order to reduce our borrowing burden. I want to, maybe this is the opportune time to revisit the report on Presidential Task Force on parastatal reforms, which was carried out in 2013, but never implemented, which gives us the opportunity to really reduce on parastatals that are doing functions that are already devolved, or duplication of functions in various parastatals, where the President will be able to really streamline and make sure that there are no duplication of responsibilities within various parastatals as contained in that report of the Presidential Task Force on parastatal reforms in 2013. Maybe this is an opportune moment for that to take place. And lastly, I would like to reflect on, not lastly, second but not the least, number 45, paragraph 45, where the President discussed the issue of NSSF, National Social Security Fund.
Shall do likewise when he or she has concluded his or her submission, but no other senator may, except the leave of the Speaker, speak on the point of order. The same point of order, Mr. Speaker, says that we must cite the point of order. What is out of order? Mr. Speaker, I listened to my colleague on the other side of the aisle, rising, and I just want to remind the House that this is another arm of government. A senator sitting on this side, arguing on a matter, and the motion that we're discussing today is in the Senate recording its thanks on the President's speech. The only way that we can grow with each other is if we allow divergence of opinions, because there's no way that I can share the same opinion as the other member. So when it comes to debating, some of these issues that we are raising on a point of order that it's out of order, it might just be your different opinion, and everyone is entitled to them. So, Mr. Speaker, I would like to beseech the other side of the aisle that for us to be able to grow as a government, the other arm of government, let us allow other members to be able to air their views and to say what they thought about the President's speech. When I get an opportunity to speak, I will also be able to argue my points. So, Mr. Speaker, I would really request that you guide the House properly.
Okay, Senator Redama, thank you.
So, Mr. Speaker, I continue with my contribution. So, Mr. Speaker, the President alluded to the fact that he's going to have an open and transparent government. He also said that he's going to be a firm believer in democracy and rule of law. Mr. Speaker, us on this side, we want the President to live to his word, because some of the actions that he has started doing do not live to this spirit, Mr. Speaker. When you talk about the issues of belief in democracy, you say it, but we have seen the President himself poaching members from this other side and engaging in illegal post-election agreements. When the law is very clear, you can only have one coalition agreement at a time. We had a very serious debate here yesterday on the same. That touches, we saw NSSF during KANU government, how money was stolen in that institution. We cannot say we want to put more money in NSSF without restructuring NSSF, without removing corruption, without removing misplaced investments that happen in NSSF. So we are saying, Mr. President, it's good to increase the deduction to NSSF, but make sure that that NSSF is restructured so that Kenyans have confidence to put their money in it. Mr. Speaker, the President also talked about Hustlers Fund. I want to join my colleague and my friend, Senator Khalwale, that unless we have a proper legislation in place, proper structures in place, this will be another avenue for corruption. So this House, I beseech you, let us not appropriate any money, the Parliament, National Assembly, and even this Senate, to this fund without a proper legislation and structures in place. Because we are no longer in the campaign environment. We are now working for Kenyans. And therefore, we must ensure that there is value for money and the proper accountability of the funds of Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, I'm so disappointed with this speech, because in his speech, he never talked about corruption. And this has been the tendency of the other side. In their rallies, in their meetings, they don't talk about corruption, because they are beneficiaries of corruption. We expected the president to tell us one way of ensuring that this country has money is to fight corruption. Because we are told this country is losing 2 billion shillings a day. In a year, it's about 700 billion shillings a year. This is enough money to inject into the economy and improve this economy. So we are wondering how the president is going to implement all these promises he's giving us without fighting corruption, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Boni Karwale, what is
Because
out of order?
fight against corruption is key
And also
is a cancer in this
quote
country,
the
Mr.
standing order that you are standing on.
Mr. Speaker, the honorable member.
Which is standing order?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I look at standing order number 98. And number 98, Mr. Speaker, with all due respect, does not ask any senator to state any standing order, but to explain. So, Mr. Speaker, be that as it may, Mr. Speaker, this is important. We are all united here to fight corruption for a better Kenya. So when a member of this Senate alleges that we are corrupt, and he knows that the 2 billion shillings he's saying that was getting lost every day was at the office of the president of the handshake government, the same handshake government, Mr. Speaker, the same handshake government that stole the money for Corona, and the money was received by relatives and friends of one of the partners of handshake, Mr. Speaker, you must find that under 98,
Senator,
he's grossly out of order.
Olekina, let him finish his point of order, then you can execute yours. Senator Olekina.
Mr. Speaker,
this is a house of record. And it's a bit ludicrous for a seasoned politician and a legislator to start here and mislead this house. Standing Order 98.1 is very explicit, and it says clearly that 98.1, any senator may raise on a point of order at any time during the speech of another senator, stating that the senator raises a point of order and the senator shall be required to indicate the standing order upon which the point of order is based. So, Mr. Speaker, when the majority whip mislead this house that there is no such standing order, and we leave that on record, Mr. Speaker, we'll be setting a very bad precedent. So, Mr. Speaker, I would like to request the majority whip, sorry, I keep calling you minority, majority whip, to withdraw his statement and apologize, because these standing orders are here to guide us. They're not just here for the sake of it. It is pure English. And this is a man who speaks English better than people in Butere or Narok. So please, just read it clearly and then correct it. Withdraw. 98.1.
Senator Karwale, can you maybe
Speaker.
I confirm that what Senator Redama has just said is true
Mr.
and
Speaker.
correct. 1981.
Mr. Speaker, I am lucky that I was one of the people who crafted these standing orders. And Mr. Speaker, the intention of standing order number 98-1 does not require that when you stand, you must say standing order number 105. Wait, why don't you listen? You have already acknowledged that I know how to speak English. It says, at the pleasure of this plenary, you can be challenged when you are looking to be irrelevant. But if a member of parliament rises on a point of order and clearly the issue is articulating, is referring to a point of order which is somewhere, you cannot expect every member to be remembering every point of order when they stand up, however brilliant you are. But you must remain within the standing orders.
Senator Karwale, with due respect, you know that is why we have the rules of the House. Every member is supposed to acquaint himself or herself with the rules of the House, so that you can be under.
Yes.
So you cannot dismiss a standing order which has been okayed by this House. You know, these standing orders are products of this House.
True, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker,
And
I
therefore,
stand guided,
yes.
but my reading of this standing order so that the country understands me and my colleagues here.
Maybe the member who does not know the standing order can consult.
Yes.
The veterans
Mr.
and know
Speaker.
which standing order you'll issue.
Yes.
Because
Mr.
that
Speaker,
way we shall
I
be
stand
orderly
guided.
in the House, will be orderly and will be transacting business.
Mr. Speaker, I stand guided, but my reading of this standing order is that this is a warning to any member that do not stand on a frivolous point of order. But it does not, in this one, say at what point thou shalt be expected to state. That's my departure. And because my brother went to the US where black people speak very broken English, probably this is why he's not seeing.
Honestly, let us use parliamentary language, you know, kindly. What is out of order, Senator Veronica? Just a minute. Senator Veronica, Waeti.
I raise point of order. Order.
Senator Gloria, you're out of order, Senator Gloria. Members are raising on a point of orders. If you have one, I'll give you an opportunity as well. Okay,
Mr. Speaker,
Senator
sir,
Veronica.
if I have the floor, I rise under Standing Order 105 to respond to Senator Otsotsi in respect of his reference to the loss of 2 billion shillings per day. Mr. Speaker, Standing Order number 105 indicates that a senator shall be responsible for the accuracy of any fact that the senator alleges to be true and may be required to substantiate any such facts instantly. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to bring it to your attention that the statement that has been thrown to the floor of this House has no relevance absolutely to the current speech of the President and must be withdrawn. And I want to invite you, Mr. Speaker, sir, that under Standing Order 105(2), if a senator has sufficient reason to convince the Speaker that the senator is unable to substantiate the allegations instantly, the Speaker shall require that such senator substantiates the allegations not later than the next sitting day, failure to which the senator shall be deemed to be disorderly within the meaning of Standing Order 121, unless the senator withdraws the allegations and gives a suitable apology if the Speaker so requires. I want to invite you, Mr. Speaker, to request the Honourable Senator to withdraw that statement as unbecoming, not relevant, not part of the speech that is before the House, and to give a suitable apology under that standing order.
Senator Olsosi, Senator Veronica has actually, I want to commend you, Senator Veronica, for really very accurate understanding order that you raise upon, because many colleagues here are not able to quote the standing orders under which they are raising. So, Honorable Senator Otsotsi, there is the statement you made about the 2 billion, which let me get the fact right, Senator Veronica. Who is supposed to substantiate this matter? Because I'm told assistant that is Senator Mboni Karwale, who talked about the 2 billion. Yes. So the answer is capturing Senator Mboni Karwale, not the Senator Otsotsi.
Mr.
Yes.
Speaker, sir, just to remind you, and you can confirm, that statement has been given by Senator Otsotsi. This is a house of integrity. He's the first one to refer to it. Mr. Speaker, sir, do I have your ear?
If then we are not sure, we'll consult the answer.
No, Mr. Speaker, sir,
minutes.
I will just remind you, he is the one who has given that statement on the floor of the House. That's a heavy statement, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is not an issue that can be tossed around. He has even referred to some people as thieves. It is not a statement that should be taken lightly. He's not even denying.
Senator
Mr. Speaker, sir,
before we consult the answer, confirm or deny that you are not the one who made the
can
allegation.
he now withdraw?
No, Senator Otsotsi, can you, before we consult the answer, and you know, because I'll ask the clerks to Senator Otsotsi. Senator Otsotsi, can you kindly confirm or deny that you did not make such allegations? And then the consequences, you know, will follow you. No, I'm Senator Otsotsi. You either confirm or deny that you did not make such allegations before we consult the answer.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, if the answer is produced, I can remember what I said. I said we have been told. We have been told. And then my good friend Halware came in and gave specific information. So I think I have nothing to substantiate. I have nothing to substantiate.
You know, Senator Otsotsi, you know the consequences.
Yeah. And then, Mr. Speaker, which one? Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to draw your attention to Standing Order number 105-2 that states, if a senator has sufficient reason to convince the Speaker that the senator is unable to substantiate the allegations instantly, the Speaker shall require that such senator substantiates the allegation not later than the next sitting day, failure to which the senator shall be deemed to be disorderly, within the meaning of Standing Order number 121, unless the senator withdraws the allegations and gives a suitable apology, if the Speaker requires so. So, Mr. Speaker, I am requiring that we produce the Hansard.
So, I want to make a very... No. I want to make a very quick ruling that I will consult the answer, and tomorrow afternoon we will be able to give direction on what should happen. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know, I think this is just a strategy to
That matter
eat
is
into my
already
time.
ruled. I've already ruled on that matter.
But nevertheless, I will continue.
Who was on the floor?
I was on the floor.
Yeah, finish. Kindly finish up. Very
Mr.
fast.
Speaker, Speaker, I require your protection. I require your protection.
On the matter of consulting the answer, I think I've made the right ruling.
Yeah. Let me proceed then.
But what?
Mr.
Senator
Speaker.
made what I made the ruling that you should just press the intervention key and please keep quiet. Please. Please. Yes. No. You press and wait for your time for intervention.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I need your protection from members on this other side.
I told you to proceed, Senator Sosi. What is the problem?
From your shouting. Mr. Speaker, just to wind up my contribution, we had a lot of expectation when we went to listen to the president. But some of us left there very disappointed. Because one of the expectations I had as a senator representing the people of Vihiga was for the president to tell the House a lot more about the bottom-up economic model that they were telling us during the campaign. How are we going to legislate about it? How are we going to put finances in it? The president did not tell us anything about it.
Senator Medhu Nyandarua, what is out of order again? Standing order number? Which number?
We are trying to do what we are supposed to do. And I want to quote Standing Order 122 E, that a senator shall be out of order if he deliberately gives false information to the Senate. Senator Godfrey Osotsi, a respectable senator from Vihiga, has given false information because he says that in the address of the president, he has not. I'm not speaking about what you have spoken. The speaker ruled on the 2 billion. Speaker Godfrey Osotsi, in his submission, alleges that the president never mentioned anything about corruption. And if you look at the 19 of the address of the president,
Mr. Speaker, point of order.
I'm on a point of order, Speaker.
It's a frivolous point of order.
If you look at the address of the president, number 19, it is in this period that I will be seeking additional resources to support the bottom-up scaling of justice and empower the judiciary to acquire capacity and develop infrastructure needed to more efficiently adjudicate and expeditiously conclude corruption cases. So, in my opinion,
give him time
Speaker,
to execute his standing.
the senator for Vihiga is completely out of order to mislead the House that the president in his address did not address on issues on corruption. Thank you very much, Speaker.
Thank you. So, Senator Otsos, kindly conclude. You have 30 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just to wind up, my last point is that the president, in his speech, recommended that that the ministries adjust their budget by 300 billion shillings to support the saving program. Mr. Speaker, we would like to know more about this, and I'm sure maybe the budget will come to Parliament. We want to know where is he going to get this money. Is he going to cut people's salary, allowances? And then again, it's contradictory, Mr. Speaker, because as the president is talking about reducing the expenditure in government, he has gazetted additional state departments. He has appointed people called the cabinet level appointments, the so-called advisors, which is going to eat more money from the exchequer. So, Mr. Speaker, I find that to be contradictory, and I'm saying that the president's speech was contradictory. It fell short of the expectation of Kenyans, and it was not presidential.
Your time is out.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
I want to hear this point of order from Senator Korir Chepkoech Joyce. Okay, we have the intervention. Chelakei Samson. Senator Chelagei.
Okay.
Kiplotich.
Mr. Speaker, there is an issue that was raised on the floor of the House. And I think when you look at Standing Order 121 and 122, I know this matter will come up ruling tomorrow in the afternoon. It is not wise and fair for members to, in terms even of point of relevance under the Standing Order, Mr. Speaker, to raise things that are outside the purview of presidential address. Because, for example, if you raise about bottom-up, Mr. Speaker, yes, in the presidential speech, he has talked about the Hustlers Fund. So, Mr. Speaker, these senators who are speaking to this address of the president must acquaint themselves to Standing Order 121 and 122. Mr. Speaker, and I want to call upon you, don't be merciful. The only mercy we have is of Jesus Christ. Any other mercy is imported. So if somebody makes unsubstantiated allegation in the floor of the House, Mr. Speaker, deal with them firmly and ruthlessly. We are not in somewhere in Vihiga. In fact, the Senator also should be grateful that
Senator
one of his
Chelagei,
constituents
Senator
is the
Chelagei.
Prime Cabinet Secretary in Kenya Kwanza government. He should be grateful instead of fighting the government. How can you bite the hand that
Chelagei.
feeds you? You can't. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Chelagei, you know I've been here for the last now 3.5 hours, going to 4 hours. And this House can really agree with me that I've done so well. This is my first time to sit in this chair. And therefore also I want to remind you that Honorable Senator Sosi's life is all in the hand because there is a ruling expecting tomorrow in this floor. We are consulting the answer. So my rulings are very objective, and I think I've no. Of course, I'm merciful. That is my inborn. I have had some kind of mercy. But nobody will abuse it. I want to assure you, nobody will abuse that trait. Therefore, next is Senator Tobiko.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr.
And I
Speaker.
said, members, if possible, you can save a few minutes so that other colleagues can also be heard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the motion on the presidential speech to both houses of parliament, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I heard the Honorable Osotsi, let me just begin from there, saying that the President did not expound on the bottom-up economy that the Hustler movement have been talking about to Mwananchi. And I thought it's good to just tell the Honorable Osotsi, the good senator of Vihiga, who also served with me at the National Assembly, that actually the president's speech was full of the bottom-up tenets that we had told, that we sold to all Kenyans, and that Kenyans bought and elected Dr. William Samoei Ruto as the President of the Republic of Kenya. And I'm going to mention a few, so that I don't go into the entire speech. I'm going to mention a few of what the Hustler movement or the Hustler leadership promised Kenyans. And some of the low-hanging fruits that have already been, implemented and have already benefited Kenyans. There is the cheap fertilizer that the president had talked about through and through. And the first thing he did when he got into office was to lower the pricing of fertilizer by around 2,000. I think by the time we were campaigning, it was around 6,500, I think.
And now ASAC is going at around 3,500. So that is one of the many things that compose of the bottom-up economy. Because we want productivity, and I think the president had also elaborated a lot on emphasizing productivity, agricultural productivity, both farmers, livestock, and fishing in this country instead of subsidies on foodstuffs. And I think we are in the right direction, Mr. Speaker, that the president started actually immediately he got in, and Kenyans right now, hopefully when we get into the rain season, productivity is going to improve in this country in all sectors, whether it is in the fishing communities, whether it is in the farming communities or the pastoralists, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the president had also mentioned a lot and emphasized on affordable housing, which is also quite elaborated in the presidential speech, Mr. Speaker, that all Kenyans deserve, and according to the Constitution, have the right to affordable living, decent housing. And that is why the president appealed to both houses that we should embrace and enhance the government policy on affordable housing so that every Kenyan can afford a house, can live in good conditions, can be in homes that have running water and electricity. In this speech, Mr. Speaker, that one is also very much elaborated. Mr. Speaker, in the presidential speech, Mr. Speaker, there was the issue of the Hustler Fund. It is really one of the main things of the bottom-up economy that we were talking about during the campaigns. And the president confirmed and affirmed that he will allocate 50 billion every year for the Hustler Funds in order to help Mama Mboga, in order to help the boda guys, in order to enhance, the small enterprises, Mr. Speaker. I think the president, everything that he said in his speech was underscoring the bottom-up economy. He expounded what the Kenya Kwanza plan or our manifesto had on affordable credit. Actually, the president in his speech alluded to the fact that a day before, he had spoken to the guys of, to the operators of Fuliza and M-Shwari, and they had indicated, and they had given word to the president that they are going to lower their credit cost by 40%. I think we are on the right track. I think the president really has preached until it has become like a Bible about the bottom-up economy, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the president began by appreciating Kenyans and the members who got elected and the steps we have made as a country, particularly in having women in leadership. The constituency holders have increased to around 29 from what was there initially around 23. The retention in both houses, the Senate and the National Assembly, is much better than it was before. But Mr. Speaker, I had something to say about the women in elective positions. Mr. Speaker, political parties in this country still have a long way to go. And I am sure all the women who got elected, be it governors, be it constituency holders, be it women reps, have a story to tell of hurdles that political parties are still putting for women across this country. And there will be a better representation. There will be a better percentage of women. Actually, 1/3 can be achieved because Kenyans are ready to elect women now. But the mindset of political parties is yet to change, Mr. Speaker, because women in this country are still relegated to nomination slots, Mr. Speaker, whereas women have gotten into competitive politics, and Kenyans have proved that they trust women leadership even much more if given a fair chance, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, going forward in our country, we would want to see, you know, a fair playing ground in political parties, so that we have elected women senators, like the Honorable Mudhama I can see coming in, and the others, Mr. Speaker, who have come through the elective position. You know, Mr. Speaker, I think as a country, and having the president who we know has actually was supported possibly by more than 50% of the women electorate of this country, I am sure he's going to enhance that space. I am sure he's going to, you know, help Kenyan women to achieve the 1/3 representation in both houses, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the president had talked about effective oversight in both houses, and even proposed that there should be an oversight fund, possibly in the, you know, to help the Senate undertake its duty of effective oversight over the counties, Mr. Speaker. I think this should be a very welcomed gesture by this, for this House, and even the National Assembly on the issue of the Constituency Development Fund, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, because I represented a constituency, Kajiado East constituency, for 2 terms in the National Assembly, and I know the importance of the Constituency Development Fund at the constituency level. Mr. Speaker, I can for sure vouch for the members of the National Assembly that the Constituency Development Fund should be retained. There must be a way that even the judiciary should understand, because laws are meant to help human beings and not to curtail, you know, the benefits for our communities, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the children depend on the bursaries in CDF. Mr. Speaker, you know, because you also represented the constituencies, that we used CDF to build a lot of schools, Mr. Speaker, and to build police stations and do roads, Mr. Speaker, and this fund should not be lost, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, because I can see that maybe possibly, I don't know whether I have taken more than my time allocated, but I just wanted to convince the Honorable Osotsi and the others who are casting aspersions and doubts on the presidential speech, that actually he has, I think he has even internalized, and most of us here, particularly from the Kenya Kwanza team, have internalized the bottom-up tenets, and they are well expounded in the presidential speech, and we would urge you to support it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
You have just used the time that was allocated for you precisely. Senator Oloba Magoma Gloria.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity, finally. I want to just mention a few things about the President's speech, particularly about the 50 billion Hustlers Fund. One of the observations that I think that has been made in this House previously on the funds that have been there is that they're not really sustainable. Uwezo Fund that was supposed to be a revolving fund, was actually misused and politicized. And so this is actually very refreshing to know that we have a government that is willing to cure the problems of the existing funds. And I actually want to take this opportunity to urge that when that piece of legislation, because it will come to the floor of the House, when it comes to the floor of the House, that we push, that we ensure that we are curing the problems that the likes of Uwezo Fund and Youth Fund and the Women Fund have. You will note that as a nominated senator who was nominated under the gender top-up, but actually I'm a youth advocate and has been pushing for the empowerment of youth. One of the things that has been a big problem with empowerment of the youth in terms of funds is that there is no sustainability of the same. And speaking to the President, His Excellency William Ruto, we discussed on issues on how this fund is going to be dispatched. And I'm glad that in his speech, he actually articulated that one of the things that they are going to use or to push is that we will use technology to push for this fund in terms of management of the fund, in terms of distribution of the fund. And I just want to say, and I hope that when the piece of legislation comes to the House, that I will be supported, that it is time that Uwezo Fund and Youth Fund and Women Fund and any other existing fund that has not actually been impactful, I hope that we will be able to collapse it and replace it with the Hustlers Fund, with the intention that any beneficiary of that fund would at least at the bare minimum undergo a training, a basic business training, such that, because if you read from the speech, it says on 28 that my administration will allocate 50 billion every year to the Hustlers Fund from the micro, small and medium enterprises so that they can access affordable credit to start and to expand their businesses. Mr. Speaker, you'll find that for Uwezo Fund, we were actually being encouraged to go as groups. And once they go as a group, they get whatever money is there, they distribute the money, but there was no business that was being started. And at one point, politicians, some of them in this House, started using it as a sort of token to give to the electorate. But what they did not understand was that at the end of the day, when that fund ceases to be a revolving fund, then the same electorate will blame you for, impoverishing their lives. So for the Hustlers Fund, I think this is a good direction that we are taking. And I hope that my fellow senators will assist when the bill comes to the House, that we push that one of the legal frameworks that we'll place is that we have PPPs, that is the partnerships with the CBOs and the NGOs that are already offering free business skills training, such that it is a prerequisite before you receive that fund that you undergo a business skills training, a short course of 1 month, and that they receive. Another thing I want to touch on, and it's probably the last one, is on the digital technologies. In his speech, our president actually stated that digital technologies have become a critical player in economic growth. And it is time that we capitalize on them. I speak from a point of information. I actually, before I was a senator, worked as a manager of the data center of Facebook in Denmark. And one thing that I really hope we will practice political obscurity when that bill comes to this floor is that when we have to hold these big organizations such as Facebook and Google and Amazon accountable in terms of them remitting taxes to this country, that we will be able to vote as a House in the interest of the electorate and our people, because it is known that these organizations are currently not operating locally. They are based somewhere in a cloud abroad. That technically has exported the jobs that we have for the youth, have been exported to these other places where they are operating. So I was very happy to hear that the digital economy is going to be, let's say, prioritized, because it is time that this House brings legislation that will hold these companies accountable, that will localize our data and where we store it, and also that we ensure our workers who at the moment, if you are aware, for instance, for Facebook, they are operating as a proxy in this company. And one of the things that they have done is that they have outsourced their employees. So therefore, you cannot sue Facebook when they are actually mistreating their employees. The employees do not have benefits in terms of housing, in terms of medical cover. They do not have benefits because they are operating as contractors. And so for me, I would say that it is a very good time to serve in the Senate because I am passionate about these things, and I really hope that when those bills come to the House, I already have tabled a bill in terms of localizing our data so that we can hold these companies accountable. I hope that my fellow senators will support the president into turning the digital economy into an economy that is actually impactful to this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. As you can see, this is just by the way. I do not know which rule to follow, but it is very unfair for senators to walk in at 6 o'clock and shine so that they can be recorded at the Hansard, and then walk out and have that as a contribution. That is something that we should, because some of us we are coming here to work, to sit through the motions and listen, and I think it is very unfair that these people that something should be done, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Gloria. Honourable members, it is now 6:30 p.m. time to adjourn the House. The Senate therefore stands adjourned until Thursday, tomorrow, 6th of October 2022 at 2:30 p.m.